Welcome to the Cast on Titan for Chapter 79. We're here today to talk about Chapter 79 and everything that happened in it. Just as a forewarning, this is a manga spoilers podcast. If you are not caught up to date on the manga up to Chapter 79, we would ask that you refrain and come back at a later date once you have read the manga. So, here with me tonight are the regular cast, except for one, Zach. Darth Mewtwo is not with us tonight because he is sick and there's some bad weather in his neck of the woods, so he's having all kinds of fun tonight. Anyway, let's go ahead and do our introductions, minus Darth.
Alright, I'm Scott, also ScottyV23 from the subreddit, and I think this was a really good chapter. There were a lot of inconsistencies and a lot of gripes I had with it, with the particulars that I'm sure we'll get into. But overall, I think there was a lot of action, there was a lot of progression. It didn't turn out that it was, any good at all for the Survey Corps, which I like when there's a lot of drama and chaos going on amongst the group. So overall, I think it was a pretty good chapter, a lot of fun.
All right, I'm Ryan. I go by WX Bombadil on Reddit, and it was a fun chapter, to be honest. I get the feeling that looking back when this whole arc is done, this is the kind of chapter that when you read the whole thing through in succession, you're not going to really realize it's its own chapter. It's just going to blend together in memory with the rest of it. That's kind of how the pacing felt. So it was good. A lot of stuff happened in it, and there's some fun things to discuss. But it felt like it was a quick read. I felt like I was done with it quite fast, which is not necessarily a bad thing in and of itself. It's probably a good sign that it went by so fast.
I am Stiller3. I am one of the moderators for the Shingeki no Kyojin subreddit. And I thought this chapter was pretty good. I really didn't get super excited about anything in this chapter, but it was good progression, and there were some good character moments, and I wrote down quite a few lines of dialogue that I want to talk about. Pretty fair, pretty par for the course, pretty good chapter. Okay,
All right.
Now that we've gone through our introductions and our impressions, we're ready to move on into the main segment of the podcast where we're just going to review everything in the podcast front to back. With whatever point we want to start with first.
I think we should start with the fact that pretty much the theory is debunked that Bertolt couldn't stand up in his form without leaning on something. I'm very happy that Isayama didn't go in that direction. I think he's a much more formidable foe, and honestly, I'm surprised we didn't see more of him in, looking back, now that we understand that he doesn't have that limitation, he could have really, destroyed a lot of the Survey Corps' chances earlier on. He didn't need to just body slam on Reiner. I feel like he could have just easily defeated Eren and everyone else with no problems whatsoever. So it was almost an unnecessary tactic. But I mean, that's a small minor gripe. It's just interesting to see looking back what could have been, with Bertolt's total power.
I like that idea of retroactively going through other scenarios that we've seen, like the forest and Annie's thing and Trot and Stohas and some of the other big moments from the series, and being Bertolt could have just handled this situation just because later on we see how powerful he actually is. And like you mentioned, this chapter actually really was good for defining Bertolt's Titan power traits. We originally knew that Bertolt was about steam and he was about heat, but I didn't actually know he was just straight up setting fire to shit.
Well, I'll interject and offer a quick counterpoint to the initial idea that it's necessarily debunked that he could have done some stuff earlier like that. And the reason I only say that is because this is a bit of an extraneous circumstance in the sense that he's essentially bloodlusted. He's never been pushed this far before, and the only reason he's doing this right now is he's been essentially pushed to his absolute limit. And the whole situation with Reiner is what kind of brought him to this point. So it's going to be interesting to see, I think, when all this is said and done, how much energy he has left afterwards. It could be that part of the reason why he didn't before is that he was trying to conserve as much as he had, and also the stealth reasons that go into it. The whole espionage and all that. But in this scenario, I'm interested to see once this pans out, if he's used his tank 100%, if he's got anything left, or is he just going to be wiped out and done after this is over.
I think it's a very fair point, because I'm mostly looking at it as a hypothetical kind of thing. And most of the time when you talk about Bertolt, we see a lot of hypotheticals come into play when people talk about, like, oh, which of the shifters is the strongest shifter? Oh, Bertolt's weak. All he can do is stand up.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah.
And that kind of thing.
And also, I think there's more credence to what you said, Reiner, going to your point, because I forget who said it later on, but they said, let's wait it out and see if Bertolt like runs out of steam, no pun intended, and then we'll pounce on him. And it's like, since that topic is brought up, Shingeki no Kyojin, this entire series is pretty much like defined by someone saying something and then that becoming true, So the fact that that's that sentiment, like, oh, maybe he'll run out of energy, I'm pretty sure he's probably going to run out of energy because the concept's been brought up,
Yeah.
That's a funny point. What if the Titans attack today?
I'm glad you mentioned that.
Exactly.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I forgot that I wanted to mention that too, is that they actually at one point had planned, like their plan for beating him had turned into, well, he's really powerful. Maybe we should just wait until he's tired.
The war of attrition just wind him down.
How do you guys feel about that plan? Do you think that plan would have worked if they just stuck with that?
I feel that's a plan of desperation because it's not so much as a plan as much as we can't really do anything else.
Yeah, and it's not really going to solve anything if they wait until he's run out of energy, because for all they know, Reiner's gaining more energy as well, and he's regenerating, and he's going to eventually join the fight. So when one Titan falls, although, Bertolt's a much bigger threat, another one rises, and when Reiner comes into play, I don't think there will be in any position to defend another Reiner attack, and then who knows what Monkey Trouble's doing, on the offensive as well, which we find out later in this chapter. They're already pressed for time, so waiting more for Titans just to run out of energy, I feel like I understand the idea behind it, but I feel like it's ill-willed, like it's not going to work out for them.
That's kind of what I mean by it's not so much of a plan as it is the absence of a plan.
Exactly.
Yeah. They just don't have any other options. I mean, until they figure something out. I'm sure that's going to come up next chapter, but
yeah,
for the time being, yeah.
Of all the plans they went through in this chapter, that one was definitely the worst. One of the pieces of dialogue that I wrote down from this chapter was someone, I can't remember who it was, saying, "We have to beat him with the forces we have, as in right now."
Oh yes, yeah.
Going into attack mode, basically, because they feel like they're so desperate that they have no other choice.
And also, like, when they said pretty much at the end of this chapter, I know I'm skipping ahead a lot, but when Eren charges Bertolt, it's like, I got the sense that there was supposed to be a group effort, and then nobody else joined the fight.
He went full Leroy Jenkins on.
Think about that. What can anybody else possibly do? They can't even get close to the guy without burning up.
Mikasa had actually asked somebody specifically for Thunderspirit because she had some plan of attack.
Yeah.
She had come up with some way. She's in her brain. Something's in there going, "Hey, this is how I'm gonna get him." So.
I'll throw a prediction in there. I think what's going to happen is multiple people are going to throw the Thunder Spear or use it on his Achilles heels, like his tendons, and then he's going to not be able to stand, so he's going to fall over. And then once they fall over, they'll be able to get on his back or something, or I know it's still the issue.
Anything.
Yeah.
They did that to Annie too.
Right. So I feel like that might be what they're planning.
Well, I guess you really only need to get him off balance, and once he starts falling, he's not going to recover from that.
So,
true.
I know this is hypothetical again, but assuming that this attack, once it starts, do you think Monkey Trouble is just going to sit there and watch this happen?
That's a good point.
Because,
that's a good question.
As we saw in this chapter, he kind of, from what it looked like to me, it looked like he just got bored.
I don't think he places a whole lot of value on Reiner and Bert.
He's been sitting around just watching.
Just chilling.
For however many chapters now. It seemed to me like he just got bored this chapter, and that's when he decided he wanted to do his
I don't blame him.
Baseball thing.
All the action's away, all the action's somewhere else.
Yeah.
Monkey Trouble's a busy guy. He's got to be busy.
Considering the Circuit Corps' forces are now mostly down to the 104th, and, the characters we're actually seeing, if Monkey Trouble just waits for them to attack Bertolt, he could probably theoretically take out some of them and whittle the cast down if that makes sense to me. That seems like the thing to do.
Yeah, if this chapter's any indication, it'll be literally one throw rocks, and every single character in the 104th would be dead.
Because we
I was
just
just thinking
saw.
that, and I bet Bert could tank a whole throw of rocks.
Well, I was getting ready to say Bertolt
Oh, yeah.
basically made a field goal out of Aaron. It almost kicked him over the wall entirely. So what's the defense here?
I want that kick rock throw combo. Come on
What's
now.
really going on here? And we got a good sports theme going on in this chapter because there was a line from Aaron where he said, "He's in my hometown, setting fire to my houses. You can't do this. It's like my house. You can't do this in my house. Let's go." You know. I think that works well with the sports theme we have in this chapter.
Well, speaking of houses, I'd like to segue actually back to the start of the chapter. And we have that wonderful line from Connie.
Wonderful.
It's actually it's pretty funny. I mean, to be honest, it was it's I didn't expect to get the little comic relief in the middle of it, but it's quite endearing.
Yeah, apparently in the in Mika's early translation or the early summary that came out, it was a little bit different than what Crunchyroll went with.
Oh yeah, what are the differences?
The differences was more that Mika translated it more as an actual attempt at comedy from Connie, whereas in the Crunchyroll it was more just like a statement, like it was more jokey in her original version.
I thought it was pretty intentionally humorous in the English version, but maybe that was just my
It ended up being
perception of it.
more than that original.
Well, it sounded, to be honest, it read so, like one of those lines that's just so stupid and bad that it's over the top and funny.
Isn't that weird? Isn't that a weird
that's the
thing to
purpose.
say
That's why
in this situation?
Well, yeah, that's why it's comic relief. I mean, it's in character for Connie, but out of character for the situation.
Okay, yeah. I was gonna say this is not the time for that.
No, it's really not.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a comic book, you know what I mean? Fuck
Yeah.
it. Which is not really a justification or excuse at all, to be completely honest. I mean, really, I've criticized lesser things in the past, but
It's true.
It's more like an explanation, not giving it credence or denouncing it. But at the same time, it's like, even I think, like, dude, everyone's houses are burning up in flames and you're cracking jokes. It's like, you know,
I mean, to be fair, it's almost like a little bit of satire too, because
true.
I mean, think about how many times, you know, in this genre, some stupid statement like that is made seriously, and it's some slow-mo fucking inner monologue pen, and yeah, no, enough of that bullshit. I do think it's kind of funny. This is a little on the nose with that, because that is, it's honestly kind of a line you'd expect out of some, you know, some garbage story, but it's fun to see.
In a regular anime like this would just be like a fight between two big characters. You'd expect that kind of thing, but this is usually a totally serious, more, you know, treating it with more gravitas.
Yeah.
Than in most stories like this would, you know.
I'll tell you what, it felt like an odd time in the story to place it. It did feel a little out of place. So, like, I thought the joke itself was kind of funny, like just the whole setup and the satire aspect of it. But I do agree that it probably could have fit somewhere better else.
We should move on to one of the points I hated the most in this, which was that, again, Armin is kind of bitching out for no apparent reason. Like, did we need his character to regress further? I mean, he was making so much progress up until this point because Hanji and who else? Erwin, both of them were putting a lot of pressure on Armin to, like, step up and, you know, direct the crew and kind of, like, lead the charge. And yet, for whatever reason, like, we didn't even see really signs of this in previous chapters. I don't recall, at least. And yet, for whatever reason, he's like, I don't know what to do. What are we supposed to do? Jean, you take over. Let's just retreat and regroup with the other people, and then Levi will tell us what to do. It's like, come on, man. Like, either step up or...
I'll take the opposite side of that and defend Isayama for this, because I kind of like it in the sense that it shows that in Armin's situation, like you said, the aspect of leadership is thrust upon him. The idea, there's a lot of pressure on him externally to fill that role, and he knows it. And he's shown glimpses of the quality in the past, and especially that things that have gone a big way in his development. But I like the idea that he's still on the path there, and it's a very realistic element to me, because just because you start down the path to something, or just because you make progress in one step doesn't mean you're out of the woods. Take 2 steps up the hill, you still got a long way to go to the top. So I do like the idea that, especially in these high pressure situations, when it truly all hangs in the balance on his decision, that he still has that hesitation, that he still has that aspect of that anxiety or just lack of confidence to be able to do it, which is inherent to his character to a certain degree. And I like that he's still struggling with that, because it does show how much of an effort and how difficult it is to get to that position. And I almost feel like it'd be a little too easily earned if he had already filled this role before Erwin's even gone, goodness gracious, and things like that.
These are really interesting points and counterpoints, because this seems like a very important moment for Armin. I was going to bring this up later, but this is a big character point for both Armin and John. But to focus on just Armin, it's an interesting point Scotty brought up to talk about how this is regression for Armin's character, whereas Ryan basically said the opposite, that this is a little bit of growth. And it's kind of hard to... I think this is a good point to talk about, because do you see this as regression for Armin being... Because Scotty's criticized Armin in the past, saying that how he's just come into these roles and he's just solved the problems. That's what the character does. He just comes in and fixes the things, and it's done. But this is a situation where someone like Ryan would say, well, this is showing that he's human, and this is showing that he's he's got his own faults too. This is showing that he's not just that fill in the gap kind of character for the smart guy problems kind of thing. But the real question I got out of it, coming out of that little back and forth you guys had, was at this point of the story, should he be in a position where he is comfortable with taking over that kind of role? Because by this point, he's seen a lot of these situations already, where he's been just thrown into a role to solve the problems. And we've seen multiple times now, sometimes he does it, sometimes he doesn't. Or sometimes he does, I mean. So I think this is a good point for his character, because I can understand different people seeing both sides of this for him, where this could be either potential regression or progression, depending on how you look at it.
And the thing that really annoys me about this, because I completely understand and I agree to mostly what you're saying, Ryan, about how it's realistic and it fits a character's mold to when they're thrust into a role that they didn't expect to be in so suddenly, perhaps, that they are very non-respondent to it, and then they're hesitant to make decisions and actions because they're not used to it. But we've seen in the past, especially with Armin, that he's been in some very sudden, critical, and important roles, and almost every single time he handles it perfectly. Going back to the very beginning of this entire manga and anime, when the cannons were about to fire on Eren when he first found out he had these powers, and then he gave that impassioned speech, and he's been thrust into these roles multiple times where he's just had to deal with the situation, and with very little preparation he's been able to look at it perfectly and be like, oh look, they're in the walls, oh look, I see everything going on, oh look, I'm perfect at my job. And then it seems like almost sometimes when it's brought up that, oh, now he has to make a tough decision, and oh, for whatever reason, now he's getting the chills, and now he's getting a little shaky in his boots. It's like it feels almost forced at that point, even though it makes sense, if you were to look at someone's character arc going through its entirety, oh yeah, of course they're going to falter. But it seems as though Isayama's not consistent with writing in that hesitation. He only writes it in when he wants it to purposefully be there, just for a sense of, oh, let me just throw some spice in there. Ooh,
when it's appropriate for the plot.
Exactly. Armin's or Isayama's if Armin just solves this problem immediately, this isn't going to be good. So instead of whether or not this is good for Armin to have this character development or progression, however you want to look at it, he's just no, I'm going to throw it in there because I want to for the plot, not for the character. So I don't think he's doing it for the right reasons, and I don't think it's in there for the right reasons. But yeah, I still understand 100% your point, though.
Yeah, no, that's definitely an interesting take on it. And with that in mind, I definitely think it's interesting to look at how he plays off of Jean, especially in this chapter, and the idea of the two of them as leaders, because they both have very strong leadership qualities, but in very different facets, in very different ways. And it's interesting to see them complement each other in this particular scenario, because like you said, it's Armin's hesitancy gives Jean the opportunity to step up for this particular part of the story. But it also brings up another point, especially with the Armin-Erwin parallels, is that Erwin so often has placed himself in this position where he's such an isolated and solitary character, and he pays the price of that with his internal struggles and feeling alone all the time. And you kind of see that reflected in his character and his burdens and things like that. It's very interesting to see almost a foil to that with these two, where instead of taking the burden on themselves, all solely placed on their shoulders, they're playing off each other as a team. And you can definitely feel the group dynamic more and the cohesiveness and how that helps everybody as a whole, as opposed to the isolationist and individual aspect of the sole leader on top, like Erwin was.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's a fair point, but personally, I'm more interested in the individual characterizations for Jean and Armin. Like we talked about with the back and forth, this was a contentious point for Armin, whether this is progression or regression, but I also saw it sort of how you were getting at, Ryan, that this is a little bit of a handoff to Jean, because we haven't seen a lot of him lately. I think this is a little bit of getting him back into the action and getting him something to do instead of like Connie or Sasha or somebody just standing around not doing anything. I think that's good for Jean, but for Armin it's very questionable, like we talked about. But I think in my mind I'm seeing this as a arguing point where there's really not a clear answer to the characterization of this character, and that's, to me, that's kind of rare. For most characters, we're able to look at them and see, traits and flaws and, pros and cons and that kind of thing. This particular moment for Armin, I think, is very divisive.
I think that's a great quality to be able to identify, because that shows, I guess, the amount of complexity of the character allows for such a diverse view type on it.
Potentially adding to that complexity, or potentially taking away from it, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah, but going back to the point we were actually just discussing, the idea of, I guess, highlighting the individual as opposed to highlighting the person, their role in the group.
Right.
I really am strongly drawn to the idea of each member not standing out particularly, but fulfilling their role as a part of the puzzle, fulfilling their role in the group, and how that brings everybody, the group as a whole, to the spotlight. And one of the things that I was afraid of when reading the story at first is that finding out, Eren has the power and he was the protagonist, et cetera, and finding out he was a Titan shifter. I was worried. I was like, gosh, I hope the series doesn't just become, the Eren series, as it kind of felt like it had been at times, where the story was just solely fixated on him, and everybody else was just secondary to that. But I feel like the more the story progresses, the more his character steps aside a little bit more and takes a little more of a side seat or a back seat to the group as a whole, or what the rest of the characters bring to the table. And I think this is a good situation that highlights that example, because it allows other qualities to come to the front from other characters that wouldn't necessarily get the page time otherwise, if it's all devoted to just really the few kind of leader characters at the top.
I think that's a very interesting point, because there's a very subjective point there to.
It's a split. It feels like it's almost kind of one or the other.
Well, I mean, you saying that you like to see the group come together and see the puzzle pieces kind of come together. I'm the opposite, and I think that's a very subjective point, where I'm a character person. Yeah, you guys I think are character people too.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm more interested in seeing individual character growth and seeing individual developments, like individual plot lines, like subplots. I like seeing personal character arcs play through, instead of seeing them come together as a team and doing the whole group power kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I find that to be a little tropey, a little cliche, to see, oh, we're stronger as a group and we're going to beat the enemy because we're a strong group.
I can get that. I understand that. Yeah, definitely when you put it in that light. I feel like
very subjective thing, though.
A happy medium is where those individual subplots intertwine.
Right.
And to that end, they are all together as a team, as a unit, a group. But as, I guess, hold on, before I put my foot in my mouth, let me articulate this.
This is why we criticize some characters like Connie and Sasha and some of the minor characters who don't get that much development. Because
what do they bring to the group?
Well, it's because you want to see them actually bring something to the group and actually fit, be a puzzle piece, and I actually want to see them develop into something, like have some sort of point A to point B that's a very conclusive sort of arc.
Well, I would put forth that that those point A to point B's, that addition or improvement of their individual character would strengthen the dynamic of the group as a whole.
It's true. We both want the same things. It's just we want to see them play out differently.
the same means to different ends.
Right. Very subjective though. Whether
Yeah, no, I think it's super interesting that you can, that, you know what I mean? We can take such different approaches to content, which is, I think, a demonstration of quality of the content.
Back in the day, I think you and I had a lot of discussions about the Shifter Trio and about Annie and about those kind of things on the subreddit.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny to think back to that, thinking about that discussion, because I know from my end it was all individual thing about Annie, individual thing about Reiner, individual thing about Bertolt, whereas you probably, now that I'm thinking about it, we're probably coming at it from that angle where they're all part of a single unit kind of thing.
Well, that's interesting because there's a bit of truth to that, because I've definitely been strongly interested in the individual characters, and obviously Annie as a compelling character as she is, especially, but no, I think you've got a point, because looking back, I've definitely always had a fascination for the trio as a whole and where they came from, what them and their society is like, and that's what's always fascinated me about it, the mystery of what's out there. But as a collective, which I think is very interesting, and the individual aspects of them are fascinating in their own right, but it definitely plays into that larger role.
And thinking about the kind of shit that I've said before, it's mostly been individually tied to that greater group. Like when you talk about the village and that kind of thing, I usually think about the individual characters relating to that. It's a very interesting point. I don't think I.
Well, and that's because I know I know you feel the same way, but that's because I feel like that whole concept is just so much more compelling than everything else.
Sure, yeah, but at the same time, I love my characters.
Well, that's what I mean. The concept of the shifters, those characters, the ones from outside the walls, what they individually stand for. I find that these characters specifically are incredibly compelling. Compared to some other ones that we don't have to name, that are not necessarily as a little more lackluster, let's say.
Not yet. Let's not go there yet. Not yet. We're getting there. Scotty, did you have any thoughts on those points?
No, I mean, I think you two pretty much covered everything. I think I fall somewhere in the middle. I definitely appreciate characterization on a singular basis, but the group dynamic is also extremely interesting to me, and if in a lot of points, I think the group strengthens the single dynamics in a lot of aspects, because they build off of each other. Just like Armin is going to build his own personality, his own stance, his own possibilities based upon everyone else and who's around him and how they act. So I think they go hand in hand, which is why, clearly no one's only concerned about the single aspect, and no one's only concerned about the group aspect, because both are, just so hand in hand in how each of them are developed. I would say I'm probably more aligned towards, I like the dynamics of the group, but I definitely like some single, character development as well.
Something I heard in there that I want to point out, I think is important to say, is that the group dynamic impacting single characterization and development is not always I don't mean to say that you framed it like this, but what I just thought of is that it's not always a pro. Sometimes it's a con. Sometimes there are negative affiliations with a group that have that negative characterization impact. Though a negative character trait or a negative characterization moment isn't always a bad thing in itself either, because it can help define a character sometimes.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think the beauty of it is that you can appreciate both aspects of it individually from their own sides while still being separate entities, you know what I mean, without interfering with each other. You can come at it with both sides as isolated cases and appreciate it for that.
These are all very important different aspects, different angles to tackle a character study from. I think they're very interesting. I know this doesn't really relate to the chapter as much, but I think this is a very interesting discussion, because this is related to Armin and Jean in this chapter, considering have we talked about the divisiveness of Armin's moment in this chapter, talking about his leadership breakdown a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to go to this line next. I wrote down a piece of dialogue coming from Levi right before Monkey Trouble's attack, where they were talking about how Monkey Trouble's just been sitting out there not doing anything yet, right before he attacks, and Levi goes, "We have a coward here." Did you see that line?
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
He said, "We have a coward here."
I mean, even including translation, that's just a pretty bad line.
Are you kidding me? He said that?
Like it's one thing if you're like,
Oh my god.
Okay, I guess let me put it this way, because I agree with you. That's a really stupid line. But I was about to say, well, he's not even near Monkey Trouble, so what's the point of saying it? Because you're not going to rile the guy up or put him on tilt. But he is trying to rally what little troops he has left with him. So I don't know. Maybe he's just trying to say that to give them some extra kind of confidence or inspiration. But that's kind of a grasping at straws there, because to be honest, yeah, it's painfully stupid. It's painfully obvious that that's such a stupid aspect, that attitude to have towards it.
Man, yeah, that's a stupid line. But
it's like if you're in a hole and some guy's throwing rocks at you, and you're like, "You're a pussy, dude," as he's like fucking knocking you out. Yeah.
My main problem with that line, though, was how bad this looks for Levi's character. Because my first thought was to go back a couple of chapters where we talked about how Levi talked shit about his own comrades getting killed by 3-meter titans. He called him worthless or something. And then in this chapter we have a similar line where he calls Monkey Trouble a coward, worthless piece. Where is this this feels like false bravado to me. Where is this coming from? This is like a tough guy line coming from him where he doesn't need it. Why is he saying things like this? This is at least the second time he's done something like this. This doesn't fit his character. Why is he doing this?
Well, I agree, because
this doesn't
in the
fit
past,
his character, and this sort of damages his image, because this doesn't fit what they've tried to establish for him so far.
Well, I agree, because in the past he's always been illustrated as a character who is almost, and I hesitate to use the term, but too cool for that. You know what I mean? He's too good. He knows he's going to win, and he's got the confidence that insulting the guys is just below him. It's not even worth his time to put that much thought into it. That kind of attitude was what was projected from him. That's the impression I got from his character. So when you see him saying something like this, I totally agree. It feels like he's saying, yeah, you're right. It feels like it's the kind of thing where the best he can do is insult him now, because he doesn't have anything else he can do to him. That's what it feels like. That's what it comes across as, like, oh yeah, we got a coward here. And it's like, well, dude, fucking do something about it instead of saying that. You're not, you know what I mean? It's just, it looks petty. It looks petty is what it is.
Petty, that's a good word for it. I wrote down another piece of dialogue, but I don't know if it was Levi who said it.
And before I jump away to interject, on top of that, it's, as we already mentioned, it's stupid. Monkey Trouble has the better strategy, and he knows it. So it's just like, he's saying that in the face of knowing that he's wrong, that it's just a false statement. Did they tell Levi to stay back and rest?
I don't know who says that.
I'm trying to figure out.
Isn't he still guarding the horses or whatever he was doing from before?
Is the implication that Levi was like tired?
No, the implication was that they're saving him for.
Monkey gotcha. Trouble. Okay.
They don't want to waste his abilities on anybody but Monkey Trouble.
Wow, I know it's true, but that just still seems really pretentious. You know what I mean?
Even the way that I said it is very.
It's just like there's truth in it, because like in the context of the story, yeah, that makes sense because he's an asset. But God, that just sounds so
he's
smart.
He's not an asset. He's the
asset. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even Mikasa doesn't even really measure up to the what we're saving Levi for in this conflict.
And we'll just deploy our secret weapon.
I mean, we gave Mikasa a Thunder Spear, but Levi was given Erwin's endorsement, and
he's got that fucking thunder cock, man. And the
serum still.
Yeah, how is that serum going to play into any of this?
It's gonna. I feel like it's gonna.
What sucks is we talked about how Levi's basically been a 13-year-old in this conflict, and we're giving him the most important device to this entire conflict, and we're just waiting for this 13-year-old to use it.
Well, it's just he's just got such awful passive aggressive emo dial. You know what I mean? Just hairstyle. It's just like, I'm too cool for this shit.
You have to expect a catchphrase when he goes to actually fight Monkey Trouble, when he actually uses the serum.
And I mean, I hate to pigeonhole a demographic, but I totally understand why his character is so popular. You know what I mean? With the younger crowd especially too. Because that is just the archetypal stereotypical too cool for school fucking badass swordsman. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Wasn't there a direct line from Isayama that said when he was drawing the character up that he knew this would be the one that would get all the figures and the models and all that shit?
Probably because it's just checking the boxes off of fucking like the character list. You know what I mean? Like,
How to make a popular shonen protagonist.
yeah, I mean,
101.
not that it's inherently a bad thing, but it's just, geez. I mean, Yeah.
It might be.
story seller.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like it's lazy
Yep.
writing.
to each their own. I don't mean to criticize people who like him or think that he's a great character because he is pretty cool. But I guess that attitude, that vibe doesn't really jive with me.
Surprise, surprise! This month we're bashing Levi more than Mikasa.
I mean, he's had his moments. He definitely has some good character qualities to him.
Well,
Some develop. Well, it's debatable, but you know,
for me, I've said it before, but those two are back to back in my book.
they're definitely at the bottom of the bucket. I'll give you that.
Yeah. So now that we're stirring the pot here,
That's, liquid vessel analogies.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so what did you guys think of John's plan? Since we talked about John earlier, what did you guys think of John saying,
Well-
"Hey, let's do this. Let's all hop on Aaron, our taxi, and move over to the river."
So wait, I'm sorry. His plan was to go to the river, right? Not to charge at Bert, because I thought that's what it was initially.
Yeah.
Well, for the moment being, he just wanted to go after Armin kind of fumbled, and Jean took over. He said, "Hey, let's go here." I don't know if he actually explained why they wanted to go there.
Makes sense. I mean, they're in kind of in survival mode right now, so I can understand that probably safest place from the guy who's setting everything on fire would be in the water. But I don't know if that actually maybe that just sounds good in theory, but it's actually really like a really bad idea.
And but that came before they launched the attack with Aaron to go in and attack him anyway. So,
Oh, that's right. That was their backup plan to
so I don't know what the point was, really.
Well, I think it's good because the point is somebody needed to say something and do something. They don't have any of their other leaders. Like usually they at least have Hanji or Levi or Erwin or somebody to take charge and give orders. So in this scenario, somebody's got to step up and do something now, or else they're in trouble because they're all hesitating. They're all just sitting ducks. So even if it's just reaffirming or reiterating the current plan and what their current objective is and what their current protocol is in this situation, then that's better than just sitting there and doing nothing. So I like that he at least stepped up and stated the obvious as opposed to just let them fester in the flames a little more.
All things considered, it's a hell of a lot better than Armin's original plan, which was for everyone to just regroup with Erwin and just kind of put them all together on this one spot.
Yeah, that's pretty awful.
Right. Yeah.
So it's a good thing that John took over.
Although it'd be pretty funny though.
Yeah.
Well,
That would
you know what, you
backfire.
say that, but we're like one step away, maybe two steps away from the story just ending.
Dude, it's no secret. I'm like rooting for Monkey Trouble here. Like honestly, like I don't want these guys to win. I mean, they haven't, you know.
There
What
are
have they done for me lately?
so many fail states that we're about to approach.
See, that's the thing. It's a fruitless effort because, in honest truth, I think it'd be so much fun if the bad guys won in this situation, or our antagonist in this particular scenario. It's not going to happen because that's not how stories work. But I think it'd be super cool.
I agree with
Oh
you.
yeah, I'm in that same boat.
I can't lie. I really am hoping for the antagonists. Annie's my favorite character. Of course, I'm rooting for the evil.
Yeah, I'm pulling hard against these guys.
Yeah.
Oh man, especially like I feel like even the Survey Corps understand that Monkey Trouble out-strategized them in almost every single facet in this situation. They planned that they were going to go to this district. They planned the barrier, the Titan wall, essentially, the second Titan wall that is. And then, like, I don't know, the barrel technique, all of it seems like the Monkey Trouble deserves to win this fight. Like, they planned it, they calculated the moves of the Survey Corps, and they pretty much fell into their hands in sense of, like, they predicted everything they would do. So, of course it's going to go because it's a story. The protagonists have to come out on top, so somehow they're going to overcome this great obstacle and they're going to defeat the foe. But I really would like to see, as Ryan put it, just the antagonist just flat out win for once. I think that would be really cool to see.
I don't know about deserves to win, but I think it's a very good indicator that we can just watch Monkey Trouble sit on his ass and just watch things unfold. He planned it so well, he literally does not have to do anything unless he wants to.
You planned it that way, so yeah.
He got bored, so he started. He got bored, so he stood up and started pretending to be a pitcher because he wanted to, and it killed almost half of the Soviet Corps' remaining forces.
Yeah.
Which leads us to an incredibly important point in this story, by the way, and we're going to have to discuss it eventually, so I say we just get there now. The baseball references.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, it kind of seems silly at first glance, but I mean, honestly, that's either one of two things.
Huge
Either
implications.
a huge oversight by Isayama and just a massive blunder with anachronism, which honestly, it seems incredibly unlikely considering the prominence of this part in the story, or B, that means they know baseball. In the modern age, in the last, like, a sport that's been refined and invented essentially in the last 100 years.
They named the chapter "The Perfect Game," so he intentionally did this for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not a surprise because obviously Japan, big baseball culture there, so it's like I get it, but is that just like a cultural reference and appeal, or does that have weight on the story? Is it something that the people outside the walls know the sport, but the people inside don't? Is baseball played inside the walls and we've just never discussed it because it hasn't been relevant?
It has to be an impact on the story, otherwise it's an oversight, like you said.
And it would be,
there's no reason to have it in.
It just seems like way too big of an oversight for that to be the case. So it has to be.
Oh yeah.
Because,
and let me just.
Go ahead.
You go, son.
I was gonna say this is just for the longest time we had assumed that this was like a pre-modern age, old school kind of like not medieval but like industrial age,
like alternate timeline kind of thing.
Setting. Like this is where we are in this alternate history.
Before the invention of electricity, but after the invention of.
But now that we're talking about baseball
or discovery,
I've seen people talk about this on the subreddit too. Is that this is potentially indicating to us that this is a post-apocalyptic instead of pre-modern, because baseball was invented in like what 18 something early 19s.
Well, in the idiom, a perfect game is a very modern phrase. It's only existed in the last 100 years.
Right.
Give or take, I'm assuming. I mean.
So that throws our understanding of the timeline, like our.
Well, and it's always been our understanding has been always super sketchy to begin with, so it's still hard to narrow down, and conclude that it's post-apocalyptic, because it'd just be a case where, again, for all intents and purposes, if it was an alternate timeline, baseball could have been invented as well. I mean, which is a bit of a stretch, admittedly, but you can't really rule it out at this point.
I think it's part of that. Just an example to throw in there is where Pixis, way back, had talked about how humanity had previous wars where it was conflicts between men before Titans existed.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a good point.
Just figuring out how that plays into baseball with this story now is I think it just made it a hell of a lot more confusing than it was before.
Especially, and I've gone back to this a lot of times, but this is a huge point for me in the series. Is the fact that there's no electricity, because that sets a hard cap for a lot of different parameters for kind of when, where, and how this whole thing could have developed. The idea of a time in our history anyway, a time without electricity and a time with baseball, they don't really overlap. So it's a case where, gosh, that just mixes things up even more. It kind of throws it all up in the air, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How far back?
But I mean,
how far back do we have to go to talk about cannons and Well, they have rifles though. So
well, the thing is, the problem is that this story is such an, again, this is a hard thing to say without knowing the end result of the series, where it's going to go. But at this time, we've got such a crazy mismatch of different technologies and things like that from different times, and just so many, like, honestly, things that are probably anachronisms that just have slipped in as an oversight. Especially when he first started the story, there's no way he probably thought of all the little things that go into it. If he did, I'm very impressed. And again, I got to give him the benefit of the doubt because the story's not over yet. But with all that said, it sure seems like, based on what we know right now, there is no clear picture because there's too many contradictions for any one theory to line up properly as we know it.
I mean, I think that's a good general answer, but to dig into the theory a little more, I think that I'm leaning, this makes it lean towards being a post-apocalyptic story. But if it's possible that this is still pre-modern, it has to be butting up right up against the edge of being modern. Otherwise, it's post-apocalyptic. But I think there are more questions if it's post-apocalyptic.
Just
for
wait,
sure.
just wait until we get to a pivotal moment in the plot. It's like Monkey Trouble face to face with Erwin, and Erwin goes, "Why are you doing this?" And Monkey Trouble goes, "Because it's 2016." And that's just like, and then we
Dun,
just go
dun,
from there.
dun.
We just
I
go.
was half expecting that to be like, oh, I'm actually from the future.
Oh God, let's not.
I'm a time traveler.
So I'll tell you, let's jump off that, not that plank, but the one before it. And let's go with the hypothetical. Okay, let's say it is post-apocalyptic. Um, Nuclear bombs, nuclear fallout, that's so passé. That's so old school. It's
Is
overdone.
that what happened, though?
We've been there. What I mean is we've been there back. I was going to pose the question, in your mind, what would be the preferable apocalypse that led to this point?
That's
We have a lot of
question.
indications that it could be biological due to the whole Titan thing.
Yeah.
But it seems like there's a lot of, because I mean, again, we have a very limited sample size. We can't really conclusively say anything. But boy, it sure doesn't look like a whole lot of fallout around there.
The question to ask would be,
I mean, to be fair, it's been
what
a long
brought
time.
us to this point? But the other question, I think, also very important to that is, if this is post-apocalyptic, how modern did we get? Because that
yeah.
plays the big
What-
part.
That is a good question.
Yeah.
That plays a big part in how we got to where we are now. Because getting to where we are now has to go back to the first king and all that nonsense. And somehow there was a humanity that was able to be impacted by the first king before Titans, I guess, that created Titans? That, like, are Titans the answer to the question? And is it the first king's fault? Is it the village's fault? There are a lot of questions.
Where we're at right now, I get the feeling that, and again, this is still a fair amount of speculation, and we can't really narrow it down. But with the information we know right now, I feel like kind of the closest guess at the moment, which I see a lot on the subreddit, is the idea that this is pre-industrial society, or emerging industrial society before the discovery and harnessing of electricity, that was developing biological. I don't know if they're weapons or just technology or just some kind of innovation in that vein. Some kind of biological accident led to the Titan outbreak, led to a chain of events that ended us where we are right now down the road. And since we're, we don't know how long a time has passed. We know at least 100 years from the wall. We don't know how much before or after that. So we don't necessarily have to be traveling that much farther in the future from the departure point, which could leave us, honestly, in that time period, in a relatively, modern time set. So that's not conclusive, and I'm not even sure if I really support that 100%. But I think that as the information stands as we know it, that seems to be the best conclusion based on what we have.
So let's throw this back into the mix too. What does 2,000 years in the future mean to the story?
No,
Boy, isn't that one of the big questions?
I think it's really way too early to even tell. We don't have nearly enough information. Maybe within the next 20 chapters, if that, we'll be able to find a better conclusion to that answer. But I don't know.
I can tell you right now, I refuse to believe that is in reference to the fact that the story takes place 2,000 years after the, whatever catastrophe happened or the departure point from our timelines, because that's an absurd amount of time. Think about where we are now as just a species in the world, civilization.
Yeah.
Compared to where we were 2,000 years ago, a lot has happened.
Quite a bit.
Exactly. Yeah.
I do not believe that for 2,000 years you could keep this whole little shindig running.
It's a lot of generations.
Without that much changing, keeping so similar. So it sure looks like and I stress if this is a post-apocalyptic thing, we have not gone that far in the future, only by a matter of a couple hundred years.
Boy, does that potential raise so many questions if it is post-apocalyptic instead of pre.
I tend to think it's post-apocalyptic. I really do.
I mean, before this chapter, I assumed it was pre, and I wanted it to be pre. I mean...
Well, here's a third option. And this is more plain devil's advocate than anything else. But, the options posed are pre or post-apocalyptic. What if, instead of really an apocalyptic event or even a span of events that you could, define as the apocalypse, it was just a slow decline into chaos? It was a span over a long time that led us to this point that you couldn't even call it an apocalypse as much as it was just a gradual decay and fall of whatever system was in place at the time to lead us to this point. because that almost feeds into more of the alternate timeline theory, which of course feeds into both of them. But that's just, I think that's necessarily a third option, because I don't know if I don't think it has to be necessarily limited to just pre or post apocalyptic in that specific context.
Well, I would say that I think the term apocalyptic, for me at least, is referring simply to the Titans' existence, like them coming into fruition, them entering the story. Because how I see it, I mean, I just don't see how it's possible for there to be a slow decline in terms of from when the Titans appeared, because I feel like from that point on it would be a very quick decline.
That's a pretty good point, because really it seems like it's very 0 to 100.
Well, the
types.
question,
it's like everybody's all right, and then everybody's getting eaten, and there's no real in between.
This just goes back to the question of, are the Titans actually the reason this is post-apocalyptic? Because if this is at all modern, and we have Titans versus humans with our advances in technology,
are Titans the cause or the effect, is what you're saying?
Well, yeah, but I guess I'm kind of arguing against it being the Titans, because if it was a modern setting, our advances in technology would give us a hell of a lot better chance against the Titans than what.
Well, you're thinking of modern as like us, like current, but I think modern can also be like right on the cusp of industrialization, to where we may not have planes, but we may have like weaponry like artillery and okay,
they're getting a little jumbled there.
Yeah, I think tanks are a little more sophisticated than even planes, but I would definitely say, like, I could definitely see if late 1800s we would still be fucked if Titans came into being. We would be 100% screwed, and yet I would still call that pretty advanced, for civilization speaking.
Well, and also on top of that, the implication, if it is a biological reason behind it, like a plague or an outbreak or something along those lines, then your level of, I guess, technological advancement isn't necessarily relevant, and only in the medical field. Because if you can have all the tanks and planes and whatever you want, but if it's like a virus that's spreading between people, that ain't going to do shit. And of course, that does feed into the fact that, and again, limited evidence, but based on what we know from Grisha, who came from outside the walls, who specializes in medicine, and the nature of the Titan epidemic and problem. But it sure points to all that being interrelated, where their medical science outside the walls is clearly a step above the medical science within the walls. And then we have evidence of that. So surely they're still doing research on it, or else that's just a big part of it. So it's just an interesting point to bring up. I don't really have a conclusion with it, but it's definitely worth noting, I think.
You know what we're doing? We're looking for a needle in a haystack. Because we have so many outlying elements and so many anachronisms, as you say, so many different periods of time we could point to with specific examples. But this is actually going to come down to a super narrow, super well-defined point in human development that Isayama crafted. There's no way, I think, that he overlooked any of these details, because the way that this is set up is like we have too many different elements to compare to each other to try and narrow down what point in time this is or what possibly led to this. Mm-hmm. This has to be such a super specific point in time, and he has to have this shit laid out, cause and effect. Like if you asked him and he could honestly tell you, I feel like he'd be able to say this is like 2132 May 15th,
Yeah. Because he already had. Well, it's like he wrote the whole thing backwards, as opposed to we're kind of just trying to discover it piece by piece forwards, and you kind of only get it little by little, so you have to narrow it down each time you get more information. But it's exactly right. I mean, we're working. It's just speculation at this point, so I'm sure we're mostly wrong about this. And you're right, because there is a very specific answer to this question. And it's gonna be pretty fun to find out what it is as each chapter is revealing more and more. But yeah, for now, I mean, we're just grasping at straws for the most part.
There are so many possibilities, even though we do have different pieces of evidence that we can't tie together.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of frustrating.
There's no grand unification theory yet.
There's a lot of things we can pull, but we can't put them together. It's like we have, different puzzle pieces from different puzzle sets. Trying to shove shit together. We can't make it fit.
Well, okay, this is funny, and this is, and by the way, this is not true. I don't agree with this, but fun hypothetical. So let's say they are a modern society outside the walls, and they're out there, playing baseball games and living their life, going to school.
Can you imagine?
And then
Holy shit!
No wonder this trio is so depressed because the poor kids get taken out of their awesome life and so this is gonna suck. But you guys got.
I had to leave shifter college for this.
Yeah.
No, they were too young for that. That wouldn't make it.
Well, yeah.
It's the idea.
But no, that'd be ridiculous.
Like, oh, I can't go to the mall on the weekends anymore. I have to go fuck up humanity. That'd be hilarious. I'd get a kick out of that.
Oh man.
Talking about the baseball thing, it's such a huge, important point that we can't answer, but it being revealed in this chapter is.
It's. I mean, to be completely honest, for what was such an innocuous line. Innocuous, I apologize. Innocuous line in the context of the chapter. It's for me at least ended up being like the biggest discussion point of them all. I mean, that was a highlight.
No, you're right though, because you treated it like a throwaway line when that's like the most important
well, I was reading
line
through
of
the
chapter
discussion too, and people were like, "That was like a huge talking point," because everybody's like, "Wait, this is huge. Did you really just say that?"
There's no doubt about it. That's the most important line in this chapter by far.
Oh, absolutely.
Even though it was treated as a throwaway line.
Because there's so much that's unsaid that goes. There's so much connotation to that. So
many questions. Monkey Trouble.
Yeah.
Please explain.
Dude, Monkey Trouble for Cy Young, right? Holy hell.
Yeah. Didn't he even reference like an actual pitcher? Or did I just see that on the subreddit? I thought
I feel like you must have seen that somewhere because I don't think he's mentioned it.
I thought
we definitely did make baseball comparisons to him before.
Yeah. You know what? I can't believe we didn't bring that up. How did we call that? For all the things that we predict, how is that the one that we got right? How is Monkey Trouble? Someone submitted like a shitpost kind of jokey question about who would be a good pitcher, and how did that come together like that? That's perfect. How did that happen?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not like to be fair, I feel like we might be giving ourselves a little too much credit here. There were huge vibes that I think a lot of people picked up on.
Well, it was a fucking joke too.
No, we said it though. We said that Monkey Trouble would be an amazing pitcher because of what we've seen him do. Lo and fucking behold, in this chapter, what do we see?
All right. Any other good predictions then for next week or month or whenever the next chapter comes out?
I think that Monkey Trouble has a nephew named Steven, who is a good drummer, and he leads the Shifter Village orchestra back home.
Well, I can guarantee you that will not happen. So, good prediction, but I predict everyone will be able to be mind wiped next chapter.
If we were able to make this prediction and it came true, we could do anything.
What, the drummer prediction? Sure.
No, the baseball one, the pitcher one.
No. Like I was saying before, I feel like it was pretty obvious, like, not that he was going to go directly that way, but when you throw a rock with pinpoint accuracy, it's like, oh, you make the pitching reference. It's not like we were some great foreseers of this event, like, oh man, there was no foreshadowing for this whatsoever.
Him throwing rocks,
it was pure dumb luck. But
him throwing rocks could have been like, oh, I've had to hunt before and I've had to skip rocks in the lake before. It could have been anything except pitching. There are so many different ways it could have gone except for pitching.
I concede still, you are an amazing person.
Stop trying to take credit away from us for making an accurate prediction. We
are all gods among men.
We throwing blind. Luckily,
our fans don't even deserve the quality of content we produce because of our predictions.
Yeah, that's
predictions are so good. So spot on. We nailed it. Go
Speaking
us.
Back to the chapter.
Yeah.
I did have a point I wanted to bring up. So, on pages 13 and 14 on the Crunchyroll. I'm reading through it here, and this is my impression the first time reading through it. I get to that second page, and I see Erwin turn and say that line, the line he says, and I thought, holy shit, no way. Is he gonna talk to Monkey Trouble? Because I thought he was like, I got pretty hyped up because I was like got the impression that he was like turning around to talk to him because he was standing there. I thought we were gonna get this like awesome like Monkey Trouble Erwin like verbal fucking showdown, and we didn't. But that was just my disappointment. I just wanted to bring that up because well, there's no real point to it other than the fact that it was what could have been. What could have been.
No,
I feel like we'll still get it though.
I don't believe it. The only scenario I could see these two talking is if Erwin's going to negotiate a surrender. I don't see any other outcome.
There's no reason to surrender, though. I mean, if anything, Monkey Trouble
that's
just
what I mean.
is gonna squash him. You know.
The real point I'm saying is that he's going to crush them. There's not going to be any dialogue. But if there were, that's the only possible thing I could see happening.
No, I mean, I could also see a scenario because Monkey Trouble seems like a really cocky, really like curious mind, as we've seen in the past. He would definitely want to talk with Erwin, someone he may even respect because he's the commander who's been able to put forth such an effort. You know, and so far it hasn't been that impressive, but I'm sure one of them is going to come up with some brilliant plan to get them out of this situation, and then Monkey Trouble's going to respect him even further. So then that might provoke him, maybe not in this encounter, but in the future, to have a one-on-one discussion with him, just to pick his brain, if anything, because he does seem like a curious character, you know, at the end of the day.
I think curious, yes, but not arrogant, because that would be...
are you sure?
That would be the most tropey, most bullshit villain, you know, flaw.
His overconfidence is his own doing.
God,
undoing.
I would hate that, because
that'd be a little overdone.
That's in everything. Any show.
Yeah.
Well, I've got a theory about Erwin. This is a bit of a stretch, so bear with me. But I think, based on what we know about his character, you look at all that we've learned recently and just over the course of the series about his own inner demons and his own problems, and the fact that he's so carelessly sacrificed those before him to essentially further his own goals or his own survival, for what is right. I'm looking at the line that we were just talking about where he says, is this all, so now what? Is this all going to your plan, Monkey Trouble? Is this what's happening? I almost get the faintest impression that despite what he said on the outside and what he said to everybody else and the manner that he's kind of trying to convey, that he actually has a plan, and this is all being taken account for, and the plan involves the understanding and conscious sacrifice of those troops down in the city, whether it was to draw Bert out or to do whatever the next step is. I think it'd be interesting in the next couple chapters to see it revealed that it was all kind of going to plan for Erwin. He kind of knew this was going to happen, and he made that conscious choice to sacrifice the rest of what was left of him down there, in kind of a last-ditch effort to get whatever's involved in the basement, because we know how much he's dying to see. I just want to get to the basement before I die, if that has a part to play in it or some other unforeseen factor. But I think that would fit very well in with what we know about his character already, even though at the very surface it kind of seems like it's a contradiction to what we've seen.
Honestly, that sounds very reasonable to me. That sounds pretty realistic.
Could you imagine, and I know this is 100% not going to happen, 100% makes
Are you going to say
sense.
the thing I'm thinking right now?
All right. Well, write it down, because what I'm about to say is pretty crazy, but...
Oh, I know.
Do you know what I'm going to
play? I'm going to place a bet that I just going to say.
All right. You better be truthful if what I'm about to say actually is what you were thinking.
Go for it.
But I'm saying, because we saw like the huge reveal of Bertolt fly in the barrel over the wall, and that was like the big, ooh, look at that plan that Monkey Trouble had. What if you just saw like Erwin, when everything was lost, he raised his hand, and then you saw like a barrel on their side went over, and they trained Annie, and Annie flipped over and started attacking Monkey Trouble in their line, and they like got her as like a double agent, and then it was and it was just like he outplayed them, like he double crossed them with a double agent.
That could not have been farther from what I was thinking.
Good.
Oh goodness.
I'm so happy.
Mine's outlandish as well, but
that was pretty nuts though.
Okay, so I went with the specific piece of dialogue that Ryan's referring to. Is it all going to according to the plan that you had? Okay, my thought was, what if Erwin actually has been a traitor all along?
Oh my God, that'd be so cool.
And he said, is it going to according to the plan that I'm helping you accomplish right now? Like,
okay. The context that is really a stretch, but I think that's super interesting either way.
Massive heel turn. He's been working with Monkey Trouble the entire time.
And then you see how in the panel where he says that, below him, you see Monkey Trouble's putting his hand to his head because he's talking with telepathically.
He's listening. Hold on, I gotta lean in. I gotta hear you better. Say that again.
That's like a signal saying, "Hey, you're doing a good job."
It's actually go into the post-apocalyptic theory. He's got an earpiece and he's actually hearing him.
There you go.
It's oh, back to your double triple agents. It's some Metal Gear Solid. He's got a codec in.
Oh shit!
Oh my god.
With those mind powers, mind wipes.
I really like the heel turn theory right there, just because of the idea that Erwin's not a shifter, but he's been playing everyone the entire time.
I think it's an interesting theory. In this context, I don't like it because it seems incredibly bizarre that he's never actually spoken to Monkey Trouble up to this point, and then he says, "Oh, by the way, in the middle of all this going on, oh hey buddy, is this going according to the plan? Is this what we're supposed to be doing?"
Well, he would have had to have had some sort of secret correspondence going on that we couldn't have gotten any hint about.
No, tongue in cheek, but still.
Oh man,
that heel turn would be nuts. People would lose their mind. Reading that line, like what Ryan talked about, I instantly, I thought, this kind of reminds me of how we look back to actions that Annie or Reiner or Bertolt had done when they were still concealed, when they were still in the 104th. How we look back on their lines and we go, oh, I can't believe she said that considering she's actually a Titan, or I can't believe
how many hints were dropped.
Exactly. That's the impression I got from that line for Erwin. It's probably not at all true.
Oh, that's interesting.
I mean, that's not at all true.
Well, okay, let's think about the last couple chapters whenever he mentioned that, maybe I can still see the basement before I die. In his position of power, and we all know how much he's admitted to his own shortcomings, I wonder how much he's willing to sacrifice. How much of everybody else he's willing to sacrifice to achieve that goal for himself.
Because he's a character about sacrifice, he was basically told by Monkey Trouble that you will have to make the sacrifice for me, but I will let you see the basement before you go.
I like how there's no argument in this. It's just
I love it.
Monkey Trouble's word is law.
I want this to happen. I really want this to happen.
It would be interesting.
The massive Erwin heel turn, 80 chapters in, we're 80.
But when we look back, the clues are going to be there all along. Oh my goodness!
Can you
staring us
imagine?
in the face.
Can you imagine?
And it's all because Isayama got sick and tired of everyone saying "Oh, you're playing it too safe, Isayama. You're not. We thought that you were gonna keep people off like main characters in the beginning, but then it turned out you saved those main characters, and pretty much no one of importance has died recently." He's like, "Oh yeah, bitches.
If this happened, this would fuck everyone. Everyone should die if this happens."
The gates are closed
because they want to go to Erwin for orders, but if he's actually a traitor, he's setting them up to die.
Oh my god! Wait! Oh my god! Could you imagine if we found out it flashes back before we even find out about him being a traitor? It flashes back to a meeting between Erwin and Levi, and he's like, "Actually, Levi, let me hold the serum." And then he goes up to Levi to say report or whatever, and then he stabs him with the serum to turn him into a Titan to kill him. So he basically makes him null and void in the fight, and then he's like, I don't know. Oh my god, that would be so cool.
Since we're already in insane tinfoil theory, I'd like to put forward the idea that Levi's in on it as well. And that the two of them are just this is just the long con, the longest long con of long cons, because they've been planning this for the whole time. Ever since they met in whatever was a choice with no regrets or whatever called, it's been a deal since then.
I was getting ready to take it the other way, because I think this would destroy Levi's character as well, because Erwin had to work so hard to get Levi's trust and to get Levi to follow him and be the soldier guy. If Erwin actually betrayed him this entire time, imagine what that would do to Levi.
It'd break him pretty hard. I mean, he's already
this plot twist so bad. I
would be
so
amazing.
bad want this to happen. Oh, it would be perfect.
Too bad it won't.
Oh, it would be perfect. Give me the director's cut, please.
Oh man, it's pretty out there, but I like it. Okay,
well, now that we're on the subject of crazy shit,
so let's go back to orchestra theory was stupid, but this one's gonna happen.
No, let's go back to something still silly but grounded in the chapter, which is the ridiculousness of the rocks thrown by Monkey Trouble, and how it makes absolutely no sense how his hand, go to page 14 to 13, that hand, relatively speaking, doesn't look all that big. It actually looks like a pretty small hand comparative to his body. Yet he was supposed to grab enough rocks to where he can throw 100 half-house sized rocks at once to level entire blocks of buildings with one throw.
So here's the thing.
Makes literally no sense.
He has long fingers, and
No.
he picks up
Don't even.
he picks up boulders, he crushes them in his hands, and he has long fingers, so that makes his hands longer, and that's how he's able to throw that many.
We need an example of his hand next to something else for reference, because the thing is, from the heel of his palm to the fingertips, I'm trying to figure out like how long that is. If that's like one person or like two person. Usually Zach would be here and he'd dig through the comics to find out, or the manga or whatever the fuck.
I'm sure he's digging right now.
I'm gonna say, even if that's, well, let's just go crazy with it. Let's say that's 10 people, okay, his entire hand, which I think is way more forgiving than I should even be. He's thrown in, we've seen it in one of the panels, it looks like he threw like 50, not even exaggerating, 50 like 5 people sized width and length boulders at once. So it makes absolutely
well, to be fair, they're about half a person size, because look, you can see it next to Levi.
Okay, fine.
It's kind of like
what probably happened was he cracked the rocks before he threw them, and they fractured in.
Well, he did. You can see on page 24.
Yeah, but that doesn't excuse it.
So they weren't. It wasn't like one big solid piece when he threw it. They cracked. It was a lot of smaller pieces, and then as they flew, they cracked into even smaller pieces.
Yeah, so then they shouldn't grow in mass, which is the only explanation to how that would make any sense.
It's not like a mass thing, it's like a volume thing.
Well, here, if his entire hand is 10 people length and width, right? Let's just say that for discussion's sake. It looks like he throws 50 rocks that are about 1/10 of that. Right. So clearly there's a disparity between the amount he can hold in his hand and the amount that was seen thrown.
It's like I feel like you're imagining like he basically did just throw houses at these people. I'm thinking of it like gunfire, where it's just it's not big.
It's like buckshot. It's
buckshot. Yeah, it's not big. It's not like a 50.
Okay, well then
it's the smaller. But
go to page 18 to 17. Look at that one rock. It's about the size of half that chapel. Yeah. The roof of that chapel. Okay. Sure. Look how many rocks there are.
It's a lot.
There's probably way more than 100.
Well, I'll stop you. Oh wait. I was gonna say I'll stop you there because no. I will stop you there because it's not the size of the roof of that chapel. That's just a perspective issue because look at the shadow it's casting on the roof below it. I think it's pretty comfortably about the size of Levi's torso, because then the next thing is like it's a whole thing about I guess how he like moves out of the way of it or some shit, does his weird little pose. Okay, so we do have half a torso rock, and I would say it's very easy to estimate that's at least 100 rocks looking at that picture. Okay.
Yeah,
well, I'll tell you, here's another I guess reference point. Yeah, you could almost call it a counterpoint, but he throws that batch of rocks at Levi, right? We don't see him break up those rocks in the first place, but the next time we see him throw, we see him break up the rocks, so it's a separate occasion. Perhaps he broke it up into smaller sizes the second time, so which is why there's so many more pebbles, but that's kind of a stretch.
And we know he had to do multiple throws. They just didn't show all of them.
Right, but it stands to reason that there's no way he could have thrown multiple in succession, like, to make this picture be multiple throws. It seems as if this one picture is one throw.
I do think you got a point because it looks like it's hard to tell. I mean, obviously this is such a minor thing to be griping over because it really doesn't affect the story at all. But I feel like there is a bit of a discrepancy between the number and size of like pebbles or rocks in his hand when he's throwing them compared to the spread, where they're going, the amount. And again, there's really just nitpicking at this point. Yeah. But it is
the only thing of real consequences that we added like 30 characters to the kitchen.
Yeah,
and they were red shirts, so they didn't even get names.
Yeah, I don't even know who that is.
It's just adding to the lunch line, I know.
Like, I'm not trying to like demean the effort and the impact that Monkey Trouble's having right now with the rock throws. Like, I think that's badass and awesome, and I really do like that he's super powerful.
Or just super harsh criticism on his artwork.
Yeah, it's just I just really doubt
unacceptable
because it doesn't work.
The implication. Because
I can't fault you for it because I've had much more minor gripes. You know what I mean?
Like, yeah, and here's a further point to kind of back up why my gripe with this might be a little more justified, is because this could potentially turn into a defining plot point, because the people say even we have to make a move, we have to do something different, because this entire city line or whatever is going to be leveled and we're going to have nowhere to defend. Number one, is he really going to destroy the foundation of every single house to where there's nowhere to go? Is that really a thing that's going to happen here?
I guarantee you somebody's listening to this and is saying, God damn, that is absolutely nothing.
Yeah, really. I kind of want to go back to the beginning of the chapter where we talked about how powerful Bertolt really is and realizing what he's capable of. If Bertolt and Monkey Trouble are capable of this kind of destruction, why didn't they open with this? Why didn't they just do this from the beginning?
I don't think they wanted to show their cards yet. I like the idea that now the cat's out of the bag. Now they can show it with.
Why not? If they could wipe out half of their force by Monkey Trouble being bored, why not open with that?
Because they needed the coordinate and they needed the basement in the same place, whatever is in the basement.
Aaron, this just
did they even
killed
care
everyone
about the
around
basement?
him. They probably care.
But my point is, they didn't start doing that until they haven't started fucking shit up until they have their goal in sight. They got it all in the area. I'm just speculating because I'm sure there's a pretty good reason why they waited to the very edge of the walls, at the farthest south location of the society, at the very place where the basement is, at the very place where your coordinate happens to show up as well. I feel like all the conditions were lining up perfectly for them. Because otherwise, if they showed their hand too soon, I mean, they may not even been able to pull this off. A huge amount of this plan relied on the element of surprise to outsmart, to kind of checkmate, Erwin tentatively in the situation, because we don't know that he doesn't have something up his sleeve yet.
I don't know if you could call it a real tactical disadvantage to allowing them to be able to counter him throwing rocks. You know what I mean? Like there's no crazy strategy. He just picked up rocks and threw them.
It's a pretty good plan, though.
Yeah.
I mean, it worked out well, but
worked out.
Is it just like, hide in the houses?
Well, it's just indirect, artillery fire, as far as I can tell. The idea is not necessarily to kill them, but just to position them correctly.
I don't really think.
He's wiping out he's wiping out as many people as he can, but perhaps it's just cover fire.
If the goal is to get Aaron,
can do his work,
why not just kill everyone except for Aaron and then double team him? Because we don't really see a threat to Bertolt and Monkey Trouble right now. They're kind of dominating this. Why don't just end the fight? I feel like they have the ability to just end the fight, and they're not, because...
Well, again, the big question, I don't know if we know this definitively, what is their end goal?
To get Aaron. They want Aaron.
Quote-unquote, end the fight.
Kill everyone except for Aaron.
They keep saying that their goal is to destroy humanity, but is that really their end goal?
No.
If they are looking for whatever's in the basement, too, that may be... a different motive, and maybe
would it not speed up their process a lot by killing everyone except for Aaron and then forcing Aaron to take them to his basement?
I think that's pretty much what they're trying to do. Remember, everybody else hiding at this point. They don't know that everybody else is dead, so they're just gonna fire and brimstone in the place until there's nothing.
If this is what they're trying to do, then I feel like they have the firepower to have been able to done it by now.
Well, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, because I think there's more to it than what we're seeing in this chapter, and I think it'll be revealed as their plan kind of unfolds in later chapters, because it seems too well coordinated to just be kind of like a pointless exercise.
Yeah.
Between the barrel, between the rock bombardment, between Reiner, whatever he's doing, between Bert's current behavior, it seems like it's all too well coordinated and planned to just be. To have no purpose to it. How
this plan should have gone? This plan should have gone. All three, Reiner, Bertolt, and Monkey Trouble, all line up and they all throw rocks. That's it. Conflict's over. You killed everyone.
But what is keeping everybody staying there instead of just fleeing? Because remember, there's nobody there except for the scouts who are there specifically for that purpose.
I feel like the three of them could just chase them down. I really do not... This goes back to what we talked about in previous chapters, where I don't feel like humanity has a fucking chance in hell of winning this fight.
I think it's too early to judge the quality of their plan, because we don't know their final ultimate goal. Because I'm sure destroying humanity is a part of it. I think I'm of the opinion that destroying humanity is simply
I don't really think that's their goal at all.
A byproduct of what their final plan is. If that's even their goal, if that may not even be their goal at all, they could just be doing it for show, or that could just be a byproduct of what their actual goal is, and that's just going to occur on the process.
I think they just
but still,
want Aaron.
too many unknowns for it to call it a bad plan yet, because we haven't seen how.
I'm not calling it a bad plan. I just think they could have done it better.
We'll wait till we see what their plan is, and I'm sure.
I'm not going to call it a bad plan yet. I'm just going to say
there's probably going to be a fatal flaw. Let's be real, because
Well, of course, there'd be no story, and that also goes to the point of Stiller, like why they wouldn't just simply bum rush them and just destroy them all, because clearly they have the capability, is because there would be no story, you know.
Don't give me that meta character shit.
I know. I hate to do it, but you know that's the answer.
I know that's the answer. I know.
So clearly, you know. I mean, it would make sense since Bertolt single-handedly pretty much has the ability to crush them all, and then if you throw Reiner in the mix while that's happening, you know, while he was at full health, and then you throw in
Monkey Trouble's just sitting around being bored. Like, come on.
He's been busy. He's out there fucking winning Cy Young awards, man. Come on now.
God, this is your Rock's thing to me. Is that they didn't their plan isn't optimized because the plot says that they can't. I hate that.
Yeah.
Well, that is a huge assumption, and I take issue with that, because we don't know the full extent of their plan, and we don't know where this is going, and there's too many unknowns from the reader's perspective that are purposefully obfuscated and mystified for us to really be able to draw a strong conclusion about the quality of their plan at this point.
I don't know if there's any unknown that's worth them not just.
Well, I see that's worth it. Yeah.
Let me also add that I'm pretty sure.
What unknown do we care about that's worth
I'll tell you what,
Trouble's plan not being, but just.
That's a good question, and the answer to that question is the overarching question that's been going back to like the beginning of the series, is that what the hell do the shifters even want with the coordinate in the first place? You know, what the hell are they even doing here? You know, that's like an overarching question of the series. So I think that isn't such a simple thing to answer, because it is must be pretty big, because if it's the same thing that got them to here in the first place, it's got to be pretty huge.
I hate this so much. Just be patient. I hate being patient.
I know.
Because it's just like, this should have been over by now. There's no the plot is the reason this is not over. This should have been done like 2 chapters.
Yeah, of course.
Just go. There's nothing to stop you. The Thunder Spears. That was such a coordinated event that they could not do on all 3 of them if they were together. Just go. That's all you had to do, was just go. They could not have stopped you.
What if their plan was to kill, and I think they even mentioned this, was to kill all of them, and they couldn't have done that before because Monkey Trouble had to throw the rocks and block the exit for the horses. You know, we forgot about the horse subplot.
The big argument is that humanity is just going to run away if that happens, right? But they're going to come back, aren't they? They have to get to the basement at some point. The Survey Corps.
They don't give.
They're going to come back. It's not like they're going to leave Shiganshina forever. Just wait for them to come back. What are they going to do? Not come back?
That's the point. That's why they blocked up the horses, so that they wouldn't have to wait, because it's inevitable, so they just do it now so they can get it over with.
Yeah, fair. And that's fine, but even if the Survey Corps ran away, they'd have to come back eventually.
But the thing is, why would you allow them to have the opportunity to regroup and then prepare another tactic that may catch you off guard? Why wouldn't you just, if you know they're going to go there originally and that they're going to be as prepared as they ever could be to this point, why would you give them further time to prepare? That just doesn't seem strategically smart for them to do.
Maybe I'm arrogant. I can't think of humanity coming up with something that could beat the 3 of them combined.
Well, but why even give them the chance is the point.
Well, yeah, fine. Throw the rocks and block the horses off and then bum rush them.
But if you bum rush them, then they're probably going to destroy some of the wall, and they'll give them the opportunity to escape.
Who cares?
Here's something I'll point out.
I was going to say, who cares? But the escape thing, fine. Just don't destroy the wall. Just bum rush them without breaking anything.
What if next chapter, this is just phase 1, and Monkey Trouble's about to go in there and brawl himself? Maybe this is just a setup. Because if that's the case, then that invalidates all your criticism, because it's part of the plan.
I want that a lot.
Invalidated. How do you feel about that, son?
Let's go. Erwin is going to turn traitor, and there's going to be a bum rush. Humanity is completely fucked.
I like it.
I like it.
To bring up a point, though, that you glanced upon just quite briefly, and you mentioned how this whole ordeal has been dragged out, you know what I mean? They should have ended it chapters ago, et cetera, et cetera. I just wanted to point out how much more, and this is just me personally, really, how much more I'm enjoying this arc so far than the last one. There were so many points through the last couple arcs, or at least, I'm thinking like the political arc, which I enjoyed. There were parts of it, but there were so many points where I was thinking, boy, this thing is just dragging on. This part of the story just will not conclude. It's where are we going with this?
It's
just
good
seems
to
like
have action.
Yeah, every month is dragging on, and even though not just action though, because the last couple arcs here, or recently in the story, we have had a resurgence in action, which has helped things speed up again and make this thing go quicker. But the plot points, I mean, the plot reveals have gone into overdrive. The last arc, I mean, it's been significantly more questions answered than
Yeah, exactly.
more questions posed at this point, which is cool because it feels like the whole thing is moving through quicker. I feel like I'm reading through this chapter and it's being like, oh man, we're done already. Goodness gracious.
It's funny you mention that because before we came into this chapter and had the whole baseball thing happened, I was thinking we actually do have a lot of the answers that we previously didn't have. We've come a long way in terms of answers. This was the chapter that actually introduced. It's been a while since we've had a chapter introduce new questions.
The Grisha reveal is what really kicked it off into overdrive. I think that's kind of where we went off the deep end and started like setting off the chain reaction of a lot of the big mysteries from the start that are starting to be unraveled.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it has definitely picked up in pace. Even still, I still hold to my previous point that this should have been done already. Come on, guys. I mean, you can't. I mean, ECL, but you can't tell me that this really needed to take this long. And I'm not saying like this is like bad pacing. I'm just saying, realistically, this conflict should have it shouldn't have taken this long. Realistically, within the plot, it's fine, I guess.
Here, how about this? What do you think of assuming, with the assumption that Hanji and friends are all dead, which is probably not the case, but let's just assume that. Erwin's assertion towards the end of the chapter is saying the only people still alive in the walls, military force wise, is you recruits, Levi, and me. I mean, like, what is that? Just it?
That's the end of the Survey Corps.
I mean, if that's true, I mean, that you can't really. Good luck recovering from that one. You already got decimated a couple times. I mean, there's a pretty shallow pool of people to recruit still.
Yeah.
True.
Gonna have to have Historia dispatch us some military force.
Yeah.
They're screwed.
I totally forgot she was even. I totally forgot her and Ymir were even in the story until you just mentioned her there.
Yep.
The two of them have been out of it for so long.
Still there. Someone in the subreddit, I think, posted one of those crazy theories that now Scotty mentioned the barrel with Annie earlier. Someone in the subreddit mentioned a barrel with Ymir.
Oh my goodness. I think I saw that. That's pretty funny.
It's like shifters of Pokemon, where
totally.
Where people are like throwing them into battle and they're transforming out of a box type thing. That's a weird. That's a weird parallel.
Well, this is kind of steering us away a little bit, but within the context of what we talked about so far and all the new revelations and where the story is going with everybody and all the different paths. I mean, goodness, how, and we talked this a lot, admittedly, but how are, with the current events, Historia and Ymir are going to fit into this? I mean, obviously, they still have a huge role to play in the story because of the emphasis placed on them up to this point. You know, all the themes, all the parallels, all the different little mythology aspects to it, and all the Nordic stuff, and all those different aspects. And it seems like they're a huge piece of this piece, especially with the coordinate and Monkey Trouble, and we were talking about what their goals are. I feel like there's a huge piece of this puzzle that involves them that we're just not really connecting to yet.
You know, I feel like adding Ymir to humanity's side would help even the odds by quite a bit, but I'm at the point where I'm ready to say, like, I'm not expecting anything like that. I'm not expecting any crazy appearances. I think this fight's just going to somehow end without them. Because I feel like they would have shown up by now.
To be honest, I hope so, because I like both those characters, but I mean, it does. You don't want to just have to shoehorn them into everything in a really weird event. You know what I mean? Like that. Like sometimes it's okay for characters to be absent.
Would be so shoehorned. There's absolutely no reason for her to be. It'd be
a bad time. And that's the thing. Like sometimes it's okay for characters to be out of the picture for certain parts of the story. That's just part of their role.
I mean, as badly as I want Annie back in the story, this is a situation where it would be bad for her character to be in this part of the story.
It would be
no reason to be here.
It'd be so cheap.
For Ymir, though, she has a connection to Monkey Trouble somehow. That would be okay. That's the only one I could see potentially.
And it's worth pointing out again, we haven't seen her since Reiner and Bert met up with Monkey Trouble again. We don't know how far away or how close she is. We don't know what team she's on. We don't know. And this is such a wild card. I mean, wild card to the extreme.
I like to think the Erwin being a traitor thing would be a super hype moment if that were to happen. Ymir showing up here to fight Monkey Trouble would also be a pretty hype moment.
What could she possibly do to Monkey Trouble?
She'd be like a she'd be like a abnormal fighting human. Because she'd be crawling like all around him and it would be hard to get.
But I mean, like, what is she gonna like do to him?
Claw his eyes out if she gets close enough.
And he'll like regenerate them. I figure he just takes the one grabber and just chucks her like you saw Bert kick Aaron. Man, imagine Monkey Trouble pitching with her in her hand. See ya, and you're gone.
I think it could at least be a fight. It could happen.
It'll be like
she could show up and team up.
It'll be like
with
the end of
Aaron.
Jurassic Park when the T-Rex ate those raptors.
Yeah. Okay. It'll
be just like that.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good example. But if she teamed up with Aaron, I think they could make this a fight.
That'd be a little more even.
They could give humanity some sliver of a fucking chance. Because right now they don't have it. They don't have it. They don't have it.
It's going to be interesting. It's going to be real interesting to see what happens.
Add Ymir, add Aaron, add Levi who turns into a Titan. Bam. We have a fight.
Damn. Well, if Levi just became like a Titan that had awareness, like a shifter,
yeah,
he almost alone could probably do a lot of good shit.
All of a sudden, the odds are even.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God, yes.
Imagine the turn.
Oh, by the way, so this is a big plot point in this chapter that we kind of overlooked since we were discussing something very strongly related to it about what they're trying to accomplish here, Bert and Monkey Trouble. Later in the chapter, we get to this point, which I thought was a really cool moment for Bert, where Aaron and friends try to get his attention and say, "All right, we're gonna yell him, we're gonna distract him and pull him over here so we fight him." And Bert just goes, "Fuck you guys, I'm not falling for that," and just keeps going to whatever the fuck it is he's doing, and not even Aaron grabbing his leg can stop him. So obviously they do have a very, coordinated plan here. I mean, they know what they're trying to accomplish, and they're not going to let.
Oh God, I can't.
It throws it back to the confusion because now we're trying to figure out again. Oh God, what were they doing again? We don't know.
See how much...
No, but we do know, don't we?
But clearly, destroying Aaron is not the priority here because he has opportunity.
It's not destroying; it's capturing.
That's true. That's a good point. But even so, you're talking about him taking them one-on-one, how he could stomp all of them. Here's the chance.
You remember that? You remember in the anime how Aaron kicked that baby Titan in front of Trost? It kind of looks like the shoes on the other foot here, with Aaron clinging on to Bertolt's leg like that.
I think that's sick.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that kick was brilliant.
Yep.
Good aim.
I was gonna say something else, but I can't remember. What was the thing you just said, Ryan?
About Bert ignoring him?
Oh yeah, about Bert ignoring him. Let's shit on Reiner a little bit. How much smarter is Bert for ignoring them as opposed to Reiner not ignoring Aaron that time? You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
true.
Yeah. He couldn't keep it. And that, wow, that really is interesting in relation to Bert's character, because we talked about his timidity in the past and how he's kind of coming into his own with his particular role.
He's the best now. He
is cool as a cucumber. He was not phased. They tried to get him specifically, and this goes back to the whole Armin thing with him making up shit about Annie. Mm-hmm. They're trying to get him on tilt. They're trying to phase him, and he is just unfazed. He's so past that right now. I like that.
Like you said earlier, bloodlust mode, man. He's after it.
Yeah, he's got a goal, and he's focused. And another thing I'd like to point out here, I don't know if there are multiple gates that he's, going towards, or the one that he kicked Aaron towards. Is that the same one that Erwin was standing above?
If we're
that he's happens to be heading directly towards?
If we're in Shiganshina, there should be one leading outside into the wilderness and one leading inside to Walrose.
Monkey Trouble's on the inside one, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Because they're basically just across the field from each other. So
I'm trying to figure out if that's where he's heading or not. Because if he was like walking towards Erwin,
they're approaching a wall, aren't they? So
that's what he kicked Aaron towards the goalpost, like you said, right where Erwin looked to be standing earlier.
Yeah, so that
I don't know if that's the same spot.
Yeah,
it looks like it.
That would be towards Walrose, I think. That would be like the inner gate. If we look at the map, I think actually Shiganshina is in one of those districts that have.
Oh, and there was that little map on the in this chapter, actually, the little adorable looking one with the little people.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's Big Bert dropping little houses over.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Shiganshina has one of those like more circular sort of gates leading out towards the wilderness. So yeah, that portrays it pretty well.
So he did kick Aaron and is walking towards the position that Erwin was last seen.
Right.
Okay, that's gonna be interesting next chapter because
this is a pincer formation, where Erwin's on that wall. Everyone in humanity is between Bertolt and Monkey Trouble.
Boy, yeah, how'd they get? Oh, the barrel, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Those silly ducks.
They-
I don't know what they're doing.
Now, actually laying out the positioning even makes it seem even more dire. seeing them pincered like that. My creativity does not extend far enough to create a scenario where they come out on top. I can't think of anything. I don't know.
No, it goes without saying, because obviously everybody literally is thinking this, but makes you wonder where he's going, because I don't think we've ever seen our little crew of friends here in this dire of a situation.
Yeah,
the stakes were bad. Trost was bad. The Rod Arc was bad. It got bad at times, but it was never like this hopeless.
I don't know if we've ever seen them this fucked before.
I am of the opinion, and to be fair, this is not much of a stretch because I'm kind of covering my butt. At this point, we're going to see either the basement, the serum, or the wall titans, as I saw somebody on the subreddit pointed out.
Yep.
Or a combination of all three come into play in order to resolve this situation. Because otherwise, they're back to the wall, and there's short of one of those three things or a combination of them, I don't think there's anything that can get them out of the situation.
Some sort of
I actually
Aaron
think
coordinate ass pull. Yeah.
no, yeah, but I actually think there's another way out of this, and I know this is a stretch, but it's not as big of a stretch, and I think it could happen, and I would love to see this happen, but I don't think it will. Is how awesome would it be if they're in these dire straits, there seems to be no way out. What if out of nowhere there's another faction that we haven't seen yet that is also beefing with Monkey Trouble and their group, who helps dissolve this or resolve this issue, and then they team up with what's left of the Survey Corps, and they say, hey, we both have a common enemy with Monkey Trouble and their village, and then we can get exposition through that secondary group about what's been going on, and then what their goals are. I feel like if there was another faction put into play, because we've seen Monkey Trouble and their shifters, and then we've seen the people within the wall, and what if this was the introduction to one of those groups to where they entered and somehow resolved this conflict? I think that would be a really, really cool thing to see.
Honestly, I'm not much of a fan of that. I don't like the idea of adding another outside group that we have to spend more time developing and giving, a significant amount of time to. I feel like we're at the point of the story where we're getting answers. We're getting a lot of answers to a ratio of a very small amount of questions. I feel like we just need to continue to progress without having to add an extra element that we need to explain and have to give exposition for and explore. You know what I mean? I feel like we've got our two horses here. We just need to let them go at it.
I think it would be cool though to see just it wouldn't have to be an in-depth explanation of another group. It would just have to be oh, this is who we are, and then it can be a way almost to expedite the process, because then they would be able to give more information about Monkey Trouble and about their group in a way that it would have been difficult for us to get that information any other way. So it would almost serve as a plot progressor. And it wouldn't be I understand your point though, still, it would be bogged down again. Now we have to learn about this different group, and now we have to learn about their idiosyncrasies and all of them and what they're about. But I feel if done properly, it could get by that very quickly, and then it could lead to further plot progression in a way that we haven't seen before.
It would definitely. I think I can understand it speeding up the plot and actually helping us move a little bit faster. But if you leave that on the table where there are unanswered questions about a new group, for the sake of speeding up the plot, leaving those unanswered questions is gonna leaves people unhappy with. And I know that's kind of a contradiction to say that I don't want them to explore that, but they should explore it if they're going to do it. I think we could just get by. I'd rather us keep the pace that we have instead of creating more problems. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, we're on the downslope. We're on the resolution side of things as opposed to...
Which is why I think we just need to leave it alone instead of adding another group. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I just feel like it could be quicker than what you're giving it credit for, and it could answer the questions and leave little else to be explained. Because the only reason that there's so much exploration going on in Monkey Trouble and the Shifter group is because we were never told about them. But if they were to come out and just have a conversation, just breaking the fourth wall for a second, if Monkey Trouble and the Shifters were just to come out and tell them about all of the secrets about them, that could be literally a chapter. So if there was a group that would align themselves with the Survey Corps, there would be no unanswered questions like you're saying if they just gave up that information freely. It'd be much more easy to just give it and then move on from that point.
The thing about that too is adding a group to help answer questions. We really don't need that because we're going to get the answers to these questions anyway. It might just take a little longer.
I think a concept like that works only if our group goes to them as opposed to vice versa. Because I feel like if another group from outside shows up to the walls, that's pretty that's pretty contrived, even if it is for a specific purpose. But if they're out to the shifter village, or the plot takes us to that point, and then they meet or are introduced to a hypothetical third party, like say hypothetically if Ymir is really from a third party and not from the same group, which is unlikely at this point, but you never know.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be okay because then it'd be bringing it to their turf. But I think having an outside group coming here, in addition to the ones we've already seen, it could be pulled off, but it'd have to be done in a very delicate way for it to not be really contrived.
I hadn't even thought of that. It would be too convenient. It'd be a convenient trope.
But it could be explained through non-convenience in a way that perhaps they're after the coordinate too, or they know why the shifters are out for the coordinate, and then they got wind through intel or whatever that they were also about to take the coordinate, and then they were in a very good position to do so. And because of that, they wanted to intercept that. So I understand, like, it wouldn't be like a situation where they're roaming the countryside and they're like, oh, look, there's our enemies as well. Let's go fight them. It would be more like they knew their mission. They knew they were going after the coordinate and that it was important to them. And they also knew they were in a great position to get it. So then because of that, they wanted to intercept. And that was their plan all along. This third group was to intercept and kind of run interference so that they could escape. And then they could meet up with them later and then perhaps, form an alliance. But I do understand your guys' points that, it could be contrived and all of that.
So to be fair, yeah, that is a possible scenario where they could come out of this not all dead. Yeah, that does. Okay, that's one. Well,
I was going to say, to be fair to Scotty as well, let's look at a hypothetical where we're looking at the 104th showing up to Shiganshina. But let's say we've only seen the story from the perspective of the shifters. I could argue that it could seem contrived that they would show up there, you know what I mean? Or like different events like that. If we don't have the perspective of the party themselves and only have a different perspective that leads us to not be privy to the details, anytime that somebody shows up without meaning, even if they have, like Scotty said, a good reason for it and a long build-up on their side of it, can seem pretty out of the blue and a little out of nowhere from that perspective until you learn. So, I mean, that doesn't necessarily, justify it 100%, but it's one way to look at things.
That is fair. I was kind of busting up because I was thinking, well, this would be like if Annie's dad, just as a shifter, showed up out of nowhere and just walked over and punched Monkey Trouble in the face for no reason.
Yeah, because then that'd be like, okay, yeah. Well, I used to be of the opinion that I used to be pretty solidly convinced, and my opinion's been a little shaken in recent revelations, but I used to be pretty solidly convinced that Monkey Trouble and Ymir were of the same faction and were of a separate faction from RBA. Now, I think with Monkey Trouble's latest conclusion, we can probably wipe at least a part of that out. But I'm still not completely discounting the possibility that there are more than one shifter factions out there outside the walls. In fact, I'd say that's likely. But we just don't have any hard evidence to go off of.
I also entertain that thought because it's honestly, it seems like it's a toss-up to me between either she is an independent or she's part of another faction or she's a deserter and was formerly part of.
Well, and it gets even more murky when we look at her status, the Ymir-sama,
as the Ymir-sama,
as a potential monarch. I mean, we don't know what her role. We have no idea what her role was or how powerful she was or was not.
Yeah.
There's a lot of muddy waters when you start getting in that territory.
And considering she's been a shifter for a long time now,
60 plus years,
is she? Well, there are too many unknowns. I don't want to speculate.
I know it's fun to speculate, but at the same time, you start running into the point where like you're literally running out of things to like base anything on.
Yeah, exactly. There's no basis for any of it, so I shouldn't even bother.
It's still fun.
I was gonna say like, oh, what if she's actually, she talked about how many years she was as a mindless titan. What if she's actually like Monkey Trouble's wife? What if he's Monkey Trouble?
Oh my god!
I will say no because Monkey Trouble. You know what? I was about to say no because Monkey Trouble doesn't look like he's 60 plus years old. But do Titan shifters even age? We've gone over this before. Does this even happen?
Good question. But
Yeah.
I mean, the answer to that is that we saw a young Annie and we saw a young Reiner, we saw a young Bertolt when they first got
We
to humanity.
don't. Oh, I see what you mean. Coming. Yeah, never mind. Never mind. That was stupid. Maybe once they reach maturity, do they continue to age?
It's like I think
That seems like-
it's probably a super soldier serum kind of thing where they just age slower.
Yeah, that's probably it. Because I mean, in reality, if based on what we know about the Titan powers, they shouldn't age at all. From the point that they've reached maturity and stopped developing, because if their cells constantly regenerate when they're injured, that means they're just going to constantly do that all the time.
Yeah, that's true.
The issue with aging is you do that enough, and eventually it starts making mistakes. But I mean,
I think because they have the option to turn that off, what happened was they were kids and they went, well, this really isn't a good body for the kind of things that we need to do.
Oh, I'm not buying that. No way.
So let's forcibly age ourselves up a little bit.
No fucking way.
They can control cellular regeneration, like just on a whim, like a thought. They can just be like, let's activate this.
Because if Annie gets hurt, she has the ability to not heal specific parts
That's different.
of the body.
I think that's much more different than the aging process.
Yes, I agree with Scotty here. That's the bit of a stretch.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because like the only way I could justify them not aging is it happens once the body stops developing and you reach maturity.
And even that I don't fully agree with.
And even that's a bit of a stretch, but it rolls off the concept that their cells are healing themselves as they get injured and broken and damaged. So they're just constantly doing that all the time. So the effects of aging don't seem to wouldn't necessarily affect on them if their cells are all brand new each time and flawless without any of the flaws that come with the usual aging process.
Yeah, and let me correct correct what I was about to say. Like, it's not that I don't agree with the point that they would age to maturity and then they would stop aging further, because I agree that makes sense within the context of the story. I'm saying I don't agree with that in the context of like a concept to begin with. Because it's just like the fact that how
Scotty,
number one.
Scotty, please let me ask you, how do you feel about mind wipes?
Oh, well, let me just say.
Let me pose this question to you, Scotty. Why do we not keep aging? I mean, why do we not keep growing forever? You know what I mean? You hit your peak growth. You get into your 20s and you kind of stop growing. That's because there's certain chemicals, certain hormones that start up that don't have the same function that when you're growing through childhood development does. So that's not necessarily that's not necessarily this exact same process. Aging and the effects of aging is a separate process that also occurs alongside that.
That's what I'm saying. Is that when you grow, I understand you stop growing at a certain point, but you've never stopped aging at a certain point.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
So because of that,
your whole life.
Exactly. So the point of that would be that it makes no sense that you would stop aging at maturity. It makes sense you would stop growing at maturity, but to stop aging doesn't make sense. So that doesn't.
Well, I may be digging myself a bit of a hole here because I'm sure I'll look stupid later. But I mean, really, when you think of the concept, you're always the concept of the developmental growth of the adolescent body and the actual concept of the physical effects of aging. Whether that's are they necessarily exactly the same thing? Because aging happens as soon as you're born. That's just the natural process of living. That's just a consequence of breathing oxygen and cellular reproduction and just the inherent imperfections that are going to be caused by that in the long term. But the processes, the reasons that make you grow from adolescence into maturity, they stop, but aging continues. Aging never stops. It's my point that if you were able to stop the quote unquote aging process, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to grow to maturity either way.
So let me bring this back up to a high level.
Does that make any sense at all, or am I just like
I mean
going too far? It makes sense in my head if that.
I think I understand 100% what you're trying to go for.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to rationalize it with what I would think would happen, because I feel like it's one of the things where one is the cause of the other, but not vice versa. If you understand what I'm trying to get at, because
I see what you're saying, because you
growing.
Well, you're viewing the two concepts as one inseparable thing, whereas I'm viewing them as two separate things that happen alongside each other. And that's kind of the difference there.
Yeah, growing is a byproduct of aging, but aging isn't a byproduct of growing. Clearly, because you don't need to grow in order to age. You're always aging regardless of growth. However, you wouldn't grow if you didn't age.
So you're saying they're mutually exclusive?
up to a point, right?
Well, there are lots of disorders, physiological disorders that people are born with that cause them to not be able to age to their full extent. No, not to grow to their full extent, to develop physically. And there's a number of different ailments that that can happen. They still age at the process, which is exactly what you're saying. You can age without necessarily growing, to your full potential.
It's like
I'm
that
saying
girl
that you
from
could.
Orphan.
Yeah, I'm saying that it would. Oh yeah, like
Benjamin Button.
what's her name from? What was that TV show about the superheroes?
Claire?
Yeah, Claire, the chick who could regenerate herself.
Yeah.
She was invulnerable. She was immortal, quote unquote. She could regenerate herself, but she still grew. She still aged. I mean, she still grew to maturity, but she didn't age.
That goes back to my previous point, which is I agree with the idea in terms of I understand
you fundamentally
that it's
disagree with the concept at hand.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's okay.
What world do we live in where we've made Heroes references for 2 straight months?
Man,
that was a neat show when it started, but
let me just say though, Heroes Reborn, not a good show. Don't recommend it to anybody. No, not a good show.
Surprising. Anyway,
I just remember as a kid not as a kid, actually I was quite older than that, but I just remember Heroes started out pretty good and then it got really weird.
Yeah, season 1 masterpiece, season 2 and 3
Wasn't season 3 the turning point? Whatever. This is off.
Yeah, anyway, I just remember
I want to bring it back up to a high level here and say that I think it's hilarious, this discussion, because of Scotty's disagreement with this is, correct me if I'm wrong, mostly just saying that your suspension of disbelief doesn't carry this far.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so this is why I asked how you feel about mind wipes.
Goodness.
Because
I'm back down the rabbit hole.
we're arguing about a super subjective point, where you think that's too much, you think that's over the line, and I think it's fine. Whereas I think mind wipes are too far, and a lot of people are okay with mind wipes. So on a super high level, this is just a difference of opinion. This is just a difference of preference.
Well,
for sure.
I've got one for you. Let's use Ymir as an example. She was in her Titan form for 60 plus years, however long. She did not age in that process. Neither. Oh wait, no, hold on. I don't know if this backs me up at all. Scrap that point. The point I was trying to make, she doesn't age at all, both developmentally or physically. She still looks like a teenager when she comes out, essentially. I'm trying to think where I was going with that, but however that point plays into it, that's something to acknowledge. I'm trying to figure out if that's for or against what I was saying.
Yeah, well, let me
I hate when that happens.
Yeah.
Let me just say, because I don't know if you intentionally meant to bring this up, Ryan. Oh my God, it's called you Reiner.
That's not the first time tonight you've called him Reiner.
It's
nah.
There's no
I've
way.
heard it before. I've heard it like.
Oh no.
Yeah, I heard it like at least 2 times earlier.
Let me just say, I formally apologize to your Ryan. I do not condone such slip ups.
Offended.
Well, you should be, because Reiner's a bad character.
Now you're doing it with him. Now you're calling Reiner Ryan.
This guy, yeah.
You know what? I just gotta tell you, Ryan, I just don't have a good opinion of you, and you and Reiner just stick out in my mind.
There's so many similarities. I don't even know where to start.
Yeah, so you both are just equally as worthless to me. So I just
split personalities.
Exactly. It matches up with both of you identically.
Yep.
But the point that I thought that you may have been trying to bring up that you forget is maybe that it's an interesting point that when they're in their Titan form and that they don't age, like what condones that process, or like what starts that process? Because theoretically that's most likely why Monkey Trouble, if they don't age or if they age slowly, why he hasn't aged seemingly at all, but yet he could be hundreds and hundreds of years old, as we've speculated in the past, is because of his functionality, his way that he can speak fluently and he can make all of these movements, have complete control of his body in every which way. He would have seemingly no reason to switch out of his Titan form. And because of this, he could, if that was the only way to stay at a certain age is to be in your Titan form, he could just stay immortal essentially, unless he was taken out via the name of the or what have you.
He would have to exit from time to time because he'd face the consequences of Eren, where he'd get permanently fused to it if he was in too long, and all of that, his mind would probably start to go as well if he got hooked up too long.
Is that how that works, or is that an experience thing?
Yeah, how was Ymir not? Because Ymir was in there for 60 years.
Well, she was the Wild Titan, though. She couldn't get out if she wanted to.
She was a mindless Titan.
Yeah, thank you. That's what I was trying to say.
But then she got all of her faculties once. Oh, so she wasn't even a shifter to begin with? Okay.
Yeah, well, I guess that is taking a bit of a leap on my part, because that is with the assumption that becoming a shifter from a mindless Titan breaks that process, I suppose. Or maybe it's just for peace of mind. I bet he just needs a bit of fresh air every once in a while. But I mean, and on a slightly more serious point, I'm sure there's a certain amount of psychological aspect to it that you couldn't be in the Titan for that many long without. It'd be an awful experience after that much time. You'd have to get out and get fresh breaks. Clear your head a bit,
Stretch your sea
stretch
legs.
the muscles. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd be. Oh my goodness, yeah, your muscles would be atrophied. Well, or maybe not because their whole immortal thing. I don't know. That's a tough one.
Yeah. I feel like most of the points, to summarize a lot of what we've been talking about tonight, a lot of these points were never meant to be delved this deeply into, like,
true,
biological.
A lot of these are very superficial, and we're just taking them
very
way more than
speculative.
they're worth.
Yeah, it's no wonder they don't hold up to scrutiny, because this is a manga after all.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I've long given up on the idea of trying to kind of figure out pseudoscientific basis to a lot of this, because you look into it deeper, and it's you look beneath the surface and it starts getting real messy real fast.
Yeah.
All we want is the answers, even if we have to make them ourselves.
Oh, what was that? You said we had one question?
We had one question. We had a single. Do we have anything else to talk about for this chapter?
That's what I was thinking. I think we're pretty.
I think if our tangents were any indication, we could thoroughly exhausted all avenues.
Probably all night.
The only other thing I have written down was the beanpole comment.
The beanpole comment.
And I made a comment about that earlier before the podcast even started to Reiner. Yeah, but yeah, that. It doesn't even make him. It doesn't even look like a beanpole. Like, that's not even.
Well, it's a shitty insult. It's just lazy.
Yeah, it is.
And it's stupid because, like we mentioned before, Bert's not even in the air. Bert can't even hear him. He's just like calling a beanpole to his friends. As like, you know what I mean? Like it's just again, it's the same thing with Levi. It just seems so petty. It's like, what's the point? Who are you insulting? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I can't hear you.
Yep, agreed.
It's just saying it for the sake of saying it.
And I think actually. To kind of look a little bit deeper into that line, I think it kind of fits with Jean's character pretty well, because think about how much kind of a douchebag was this entire. He's been most of the series, especially to everybody else. Boy, that sure sounds like the kind of thing he would have said about Bertolt when they were, you know what I mean, like back in training. Like, oh, that guy's a fucking beanpole, because he's just an asshole, and that's what he does. So I feel like this is an underlying feelings the whole time. He's always hated Bert because he's just, John's a dick.
Venting and letting it out.
Yeah. I mean, that's just putting words in his mouth, really, for my part. But I think it's
in front of Mikasa that one time.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Absolutely.
That dick.
I could see that out of him. John's petty as fuck.
I believe it. Yeah. If anyone in the squad would be that petty, it would be Jean for sure. I think the only runner-up might be Connie.
Hey. Yeah, but okay. Point taken.
See. Okay, so we've pretty well exhausted Chapter 79. We're going to go ahead and move into the question for this month. And I said singular question, because we only got one.
Why is that?
Because people have not submitted enough questions to the podcast.
That's a good observation right there.
I think there's another reason.
To remedy this, in the future, if there were a way for us to get more questions, how would they go about that, Scotty? What if people had questions to give us?
This is the type of just asking people questions they don't know the answer to. This is the type of abuse I shall not tolerate. You ask me this question every time, and I have no idea, and you pass it on to Zach. So now, since Zach's not here, Ryan, can you answer this question for us?
Ryan, if someone wanted to give us questions for this podcast, where would they send these questions?
Well, to my knowledge, there's a couple things they could do. I'm pretty sure, and
explain.
I'm pretty sure there's a link somewhere on the sidebar in that subreddit.
That is correct. I believe.
I could
lot of
speak in
times
those generalities if you want me to do that, but
there's also an email address, and I believe it is snkpodcast@gmail.com.
What was that address?
Oh, I don't know, man. You got it once out of me, but
got him.
but also there should be a link in the chapter discussion threads too, as far as I know.
All of these are correct. There should be at
Wow.
least a mention of it in the release mega thread. There is a link in the sidebar to the questions, and you can submit your questions to snkpodcast@gmail.com. All of these are valid options, every single one of them.
I'm impressed, right?
I like
I'm
how
very
hard
impressed.
like in the question aspect of this.
So I've learned who I can address my questions to. And so is the audience. The audience knows where they can send their questions. It's a very
Yes, please.
very
Yeah.
learned process we've just gone through.
Speaking of questions,
Speaking of a question, we have a question this month. That question is from a user named Deus Ex Titan. The question is, if an OVA focusing on Mikasa, or the Ackermans in general for that matter, were to be made, what would make it the most beneficial from a character standpoint? But it doesn't have to be, and then there's the extra note that says that it doesn't have to be strictly canon, but I don't know if you guys want an OVA that wouldn't be canon.
well, I'll tell you what I think, because I have one that immediately jumps to my head, and this is admittedly a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but I would love an OVA where they look deeper into the Ackerman question and realize that they were wrong, and it really doesn't mean shit, and it's just it was just a coincidence, and they were like, oh, this doesn't mean shit, and they kind of go back to what they were doing before that, because that would mean a lot to me.
That would mean a lot to me too. That would be brilliant.
Yeah, in a more serious tone.
I find that to be very serious, thank you.
It would have to revolve around the Ackerman question, because if it was the two of the, you know what I mean, the Ackerman family line, that's what it'd have to be focused on. I'd like to see some flashbacks with Kenny. I'd be pretty stoked with that.
Relating specifically to Mikasa, I mean.
I'd like to see some evidence, whether it's I don't know how they find this. I would like to see something about Mikasa's family, whether that's her relation to Levi. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Not the two of them, but the rest of the family, and how that actually plays into it. Because they obviously have a lot of history. Obviously, it's a very important family line within the walls. But we know so little about it, all things considered.
That's a very good answer. And we've actually had this question before, and I think we addressed it similar to that, at least me and Scotty did, where we just kind of said, take all the character flaws, or at least the things that we don't like about her character, and address them. Let's talk about getting her some inner monologues. Let's talk about putting her in some situations she's normally not in. Let's put her in some situations where she has to act in a way that she doesn't normally do. Let's get different range of emotions out of her. Let's get more expressions out of her. Let's get more liveliness out of her. Let's get some insight to her.
And it's actually, it is a very interesting question, because it does place some very strict restraints on it, because it is an OVA, and so we have to work within the context of that being within the time length of a standard OVA. All the details that we're discussing about her character would really be the kind of thing that would be better spread out over an arc or multiple chapters, because if you try to pack all that in, I feel like, and wrap it up with a tidy bow in one episode, it would feel very rushed and cramped and not very well done at all. So you have to find a way to get that idea across, or those principles across, in a set, like a plot in a setting that works within the time frame and gets enough information across without feeling too cramped or rushed, which is difficult. I mean, that is the animator's conundrum in a nutshell, as far as the production of these kind of things go. But
I mean, honestly, right. I feel like if you could just get one of them to come across in an episode, that would be enough for me. But like you said, that is preferably what we would like to see, is that those things drawn out over a longer period of time. But
yeah. Well, I kind of mentioned, because I mentioned this before, but I know how the question was about, an OVA about Mikasa and Levi. But honestly, regarding those two, I think it'd be best if they weren't in it. Like I said, if it was about their family and like kind of the stuff that happened before, it would still be about them and related to them within the context of the story. But I feel like it would be more revealing to their characters having that background information. Or at least I think it'd be interesting to see that without actually seeing them in the forefront of the story.
I think I seem to recall an answer we gave a long time ago where we said the best thing to do would be to create a spin-off series for her where we retroactively go through the series from her perspective to get her.
I was going to say that, yeah.
We've given that answer before, and I still think that holds true.
I don't know if I can
Absolutely.
handle that much of just pure
Well,
Mikasa.
it might be like a situation where you only go through the most
Important ones. Only the important scenes.
yeah, only the important scenes. It would almost be like a play-by-play, but of course it would be like from different like not only perspective, but like your viewpoint, like literally like what you're seeing would be different from her perspective. So it would be easier to like go through every situation, even though we've already been through it, and then you would go through like her train of thought, what she was thinking, what her emotions were, because in a sense that would almost validate the fact that, okay, well, although she appeared very stoic in that she wasn't showing any emotion, and then we just assumed she wasn't feeling any emotions, it would almost go back and validate her actions and her feelings, because then we would retroactively know that she had them, because then it would be like, oh, she actually was feeling something, she just wasn't expressing it, because then maybe the Ackermans just through some trait, maybe they're just not a very expressive type of people, and that might justify the fact that they seem like these very stoic, like emotionless characters.
Well, I think that's interesting because I think we've already gotten a bit of insight into that with two particular scenes that I can think of, and that's Mikasa, first of all, remembering her experiences as a young child and the whole thing about the mantis and her thought process between the bugs eating and the life and death and her whole background. And then the other thing with the pomegranate, where she was having her little monologue there, and that was like a direct, like, hard line straight into her thought process and inner thoughts. And so we already kind of have an idea of how she reacts and handles different situations with that in mind. And that's kind of what we were so, or at least I was so, I should say, unimpressed about, to be completely honest. But that'd be interesting. An interesting perspective to take on it. To address the point about the Ackermans and the stoic quality, the only thing I have to disagree with that is that her dad, from the very, very short scene that we saw with him, didn't seem to fit that profile. And I feel like it's the case for Mikasa and Levi only because they've had such incredibly fucked up childhoods, both of them, which is why they have retreated to this kind of very withdrawn personality type. But I mean, not to like counterpoint it, but that was just my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I totally see that.
At the very least, it would still be a good thing to get for her, to answer the question at least.
Yeah. And more development is always good.
Right. Well, I mean, of characters that need it, her being one of the main characters, you would think, yeah, she needs that more than most of them.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's exactly.
Also, to be fair, we would also love to see a spin-off of other mysterious characters, like any of the Shifter Trio or Yumiya or anything like that. Getting insight into those characters' trains of thought would be awesome, too.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. So much of that though would be pulling the curtain back on so many things though. Like once you go that route, you can never go back.
Yeah, let's save those for the after the director's cut has been released.
Goodness, yes.
I really like the idea of a director's cut. I really want one just to see that, like the original.
I was just thinking that I want to see the original ending that he originally planned.
I want it. I really do.
I would like that.
I hope it comes out. I think it will. It has to.
People might have to pressure him enough to do it.
Yeah, well, when that money truck's pulling up to your house and it's like, hey, how about you make that, that director's cut? And he's like, all right.
It'd be pretty ironic when you think about it, because the whole reason he deviated from that in the first place was because of external pressure. And then it'd be funny if external pressure was the reason he went back and redid it.
Isn't it because this is like his first story, like his first serious manga ever? Isn't he? He's super new to this all still.
As far as I know, to be fair, I don't really follow it too closely, but I believe this is his first work.
So, I mean, we can, for all the criticism that we give him,
which is tons.
Just give him a little slack there.
Oh, he deserves tons of credit, because as much shit as we give him, which is really unfortunate. I mean, we wouldn't all be here talking about the story if he hadn't crafted a really engaging, compelling story in the first place. Yeah.
Right. It's just that
I know sometimes we can give the impression that we just hate everything about this.
Because we're assholes and we want the story to go the way that we want it to. Honestly.
Pretty much.
Yeah, that Erwin is a traitor thing, though, it's gonna happen. I'm telling you.
It's honestly not the most far-fetched thing. I mean, yeah, it's a bit of a stretch now, but I mean, I wouldn't be too surprised at this point.
I want it so bad. I really
just remember, when you guys see in the next, I would say 1 to 5 chapters, that barrel storming from our side, be like, just think of me and be like, Scotty called this, man. Scott called this shit.
Well, you know what's pretty funny about that, Scotty? When you say our side, that actually really means towards the outside of the walls, because the bad guy side is on the inside of the walls now. So I
Yeah.
mean, it's
Well,
yeah.
Of all the
I might have not
things,
misspoken.
of all the things that I'm waiting for, that one would surprise me the most, for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know if surprise is the right word. Maybe outraged is a good word. too.
No, you would be so happy.
I would
Just
be
so
the
many.
most torn person on the planet because I'd be like, yeah, it's cool, yay, hooray, the thing I've been waiting for 10 years finally happened. And also, on the other hand, it's like, no, what did you do to my character?
Yep.
Made her into a badass weapon.
She
That's
was
why.
already a badass weapon.
But you get more. It is
Oh
mathematically
man,
shown when you are in a barrel, you are mathematically more badass than when you are not in
dude,
a
look at
barrel.
fucking Donkey Kong, man. He
I'd
knows what
like
he's
to
about.
see that study.
That's exactly it.
I'd very much
Oh,
like
I
to see
published
that
it.
study.
I'll send it to you.
Send
I'll
me
send you
that link. I would very much like to read that.
I'll get right on it.
Also, you know what? I'm so sad that we didn't mention this when it happened, but like Monkey Trouble, the barrel, the Donkey Kong parallels are just through the roof here. I mean, really, when you think about it.
Yeah,
That is so true.
it's true.
Yeah.
DK. Donkey Kong. You know the song?
Oh,
You guys know the song?
No.
Neither of you guys know the
As in,
rap?
I'm not going to admit that.
Oh, you're not gonna admit that? Okay, I understand. You know the guy who
Yeah,
the guy who wrote it too also hates it. Okay, so that was the
Well,
that was
ladies and gentlemen, thank you for
So-
attending our funeral.
So that's gonna wrap it up. Thank you guys for listening to this edition of A Cast on Titan. We will catch you guys next month for the chapter 80. Thank you guys for listening, and we will talk to you later. Bye. Do 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 do.
See ya. Bye.
Tank 4. Roger that.